Yes, hello, I am James Rowlands, and today it's the WNR350, the 350th WNR, and funnily enough, the 6th year anniversary show. And what a great show we have for you. I will be joined by the Ultimate One, Jaxie Scarlett, and Monty on the show in a bit. But what would the anniversary be without the OG Dan? Dan, you join me. How are you doing, fella? You all right?
Yeah, doing very well. I've been keeping up with bits of wrestling here and there, you know, working my arse off, trying to get through this pandemic.
Yes, and your arse looks fine, I should say. So there's 4 questions I am going to ask you. I'm going to ask everybody these 4 questions. So we're going to start off a little bit more, bit of a chat. Get to know you a little bit more, Dan. So, because I don't know if 6 years on the podcast is enough. So we're going to try and get to know you a little bit better. Where were you May 4th, 2015?
I was sat in a bedroom, crowded round a laptop with you and another friend of ours, Dwayne, recording what would turn out to be the start of this crazy journey.
I know, and it is a crazy journey. You've been with me every step of the way. Well, I say that apart from last year, but we'll get onto that in a little bit. Of course, we're going to delve into a lot of things today. It might make us feel a little bit uncomfortable, but yeah, like I said, and I think that first episode, I think we hit that first episode so hard that what we're going to do is kind of leave it as it is, because we've talked about it so many times, and there's so much more now on the WNR podcast. And Dan, what was your first wrestling memory? Because I'm asking everybody, of course, everybody knows mine is The Undertaker when I was young. What was the first thing that got you into wrestling? Thought that's what makes me a fan.
I'm going to have a little think about this, but, you know, going back to, I think it was around the mid-90s, you know, I was taken to the Royal Albert Hall. I was there to witness a WCW event. But I was watching wrestling before then. I used to have the old classic WrestleMania 9 on VHS video. Watched it so many times and re-watched it because it was one of about 3 or 4 of the only videos I had at that time. You know, obviously it was a different time, no access to internet, not being able to stream things, not being able to illegally stream things if you didn't have the money to pay for it, and, you know, just watching videos of, you know, World of Sport as well. There was a few wrestling matches on there. There was Robbie Brookside, Fit Finlay, Giant Haystacks, a few that stand out. You know, I've tried to go since then, but have been unsuccessful.
Yeah, and I think what's weird as well is, of course, we've been friends for quite a while, and I think one of the first connections to get to know each other was the wrestling as well, because you were a fan of wrestling and I was, and that's when we kind of first talked about it and kind of, you know what I mean, watch certain events and all this kind of stuff, because at that time I was pretty much a die-hard fan. I mean, were you as die-hard as me at that point, or were you just kind of like, and even when, through the podcast starting, when did you class yourself, or have you ever classed yourself as a kind of hardcore fan, and what point did you think, oh, hang on a minute, let's go with him for the kind of ride?
You know, I wouldn't ever say I've been a hardcore, die-hard fan, you know, I wouldn't say that I've ever kind of bled wrestling. You know, I've had wrestling bed sheets, I've had, you know, wrestling posters, I've watched a few wrestling events. I've never, you know, kind of sacrificed myself to stay up and watch it, because over in England here it's kind of on early hours of the morning and you're kind of finishing at 3-4 o'clock in the morning, and then with some of us it's, you know, either work or school the next day because it just so happens to fall on a Sunday. But I'd like to watch and catch up and keep on tabs with results, what's happening, you know, and, you know, keep up to date with things.
Well, sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but it's funny that you don't class yourself as kind of hardcore wrestling fan, when in fact from 2015 up until 2020 you were watching every takeover.
Well, I was going to go into that, you know, when it was podcast purposes, I was kind of watching everything, you know, a majority of it was for the podcast, but then, you know, off my own back I'd be going and watching NXTs that we hadn't watched, or Raws and SmackDowns, and kind of catching up and keeping up to date with things. So I would say for a while, for, you know, a good block of 5 years, I was a die-hard wrestling fan at that point. You know, local wrestling events, we went to the O2 2 nights on the trot. You know, I was booking days off work to stay up for Wrestlemania weekend, having, I don't want to kind of, you know, but kind of sleepovers, but
yeah, I know what you're saying.
The cool masculine version of sleepovers.
But this is the thing, and this is what we did. But do you think at that time we peaked at a certain point? Because obviously people don't want to look back. The podcast is obviously continuing to this day, but is there a look back on time? Because for me personally, there is. And I look at 2017 as a point where not only due to, I mean, that was the Royal Rumble where Randy Orton won the night before Rude had beaten Nakamura for the NXT title. So we had two of the greatest calls that we had on the WNR podcast at that time. And then, of course, later on in the year, we went to NXT Live, which kind of, maybe we haven't been to a wrestling event as good at that point. I mean, or do you see yourself as, whatever happened, 2020 was a fact of, because of the pandemic and everything else, or do you think we did peak and it was just a case of we went on too long? Not went on too long, but obviously, you know what I'm saying?
I think it was kind of, when a wrestler, just to go for argument's sake, Roman Reigns at the moment, he's been a heel, changed it up. People are loving him for it. Recently I've heard he's got a new theme. And, that's kind of elevating it. And that kind of character elevation, I think it kind of played well with the podcast elevation. The huge success, aside from the White and Rollins kind of connection, you've had phenomenal success with it. So, it's kind of, it was something that was unfortunate to happen, but it's kind of, you've snowballed with it. You was given shit from me and you polished it up and you've turned it into, what you've made it today.
But this is the thing. But the whole point of the show wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you during that time. And I know last year we had troubles and it was a disconnect. And and this is the thing. And to get Jaxie and Monty and Ultimate One involved as well. But the whole point of it is the WNR, and you know me as well. It's not just individuals. It's the kind of the whole, the WNR as a whole. We're involved. This podcast will hopefully have kind of 5 people talking about their experiences kind of doing this and all about wrestling. The show had to change. You couldn't do straight up commentary, of course, throughout. You had to change it up to kind of... But this is the thing. I mean, times change, obviously. And the question is, with you being back, is that a case of you now going, right, what have we got? Or is it just... Do you know what I mean? I'll say, for you personally, how do you feel being back on a podcast and what are your kind of hopes for the future as well?
I don't know. I'm kind of... relating with Jericho on this, he was in WCW for a while, saw things good in WWE, and currently I was in the podcast going back to 2020. It was kind of like, it's kind of a mid-cards, you needed something for a push, and kind of like me leaving was the push for the WNR podcast, and, kind of it seems like it's now that you've kind of taken it to that next level, it's like, right, I can jump back in and we can see what kind of directions it can go. Again, with temporary things, I think this is my third?
I think, yes, your third Christmas.
Third one since Christmas. So,
yeah.
It's...
But don't get me, I mean, the Hall of Fame one was so enjoyable, and also the WrestleMania show as well. And of course, Christmas. But this is the thing with the change in the WNR podcast has been this year no kind of classic events, because I'd love that, and we've enjoyed going back and watching stuff. We did the WWE versus WCW series, didn't we? We go through and watching all the old pay-per-views and going back to kind of on this day, and this year's definitely been a case of kind of like, you can't do that. It's got to be with the action. So it's literally just been, like I said, Raw, SmackDown stuff with the W pay-per-views with Jaxie, NXT and New Japan with Monty, AEW with Ultimate One, a bit of Impact as well, but I don't mind doing the Impact ones myself, which is saying that I completely shit myself. When I first had to do one by myself after you went, it was kind of like, it just felt so odd, because I've always liked bouncing off some, it's ever so strange.
Okay, to kind of slightly turn this around onto you, what was your, when I left, and obviously, you was kind of doing things on your own, was there things that you had to learn, despite me not doing all the stuff, I turn up. I literally turn up, I affix a microphone stand to a table that James has assigned me, and I literally plug it in, and that is pretty much all I have to do to contribute. But did you kind of notice what imprint I did have on the podcast kind of like after I left? It's like, wow, fucking hell. Even though we done fuck all, we actually done something, and it was kind of like you had to pick up a different kind of slack that I had...
Yeah, well, this is the thing. That's the interesting thing about it, is the fact of, like, there might be a script there, right? But the fact is that script has to be read. You know, and there's factors has to be read, and the factors like the way we talk about it, and the certain kind of inflections and stuff like that has to be done. But it's also the reactions of certain things. Now, we've been with two people, especially with you and your reactions that you got, and this is one of the things that was my problem, and we're going to get onto it, is the fact that when you did react to something that I didn't want you to react to, or you reacted in a certain way, it didn't annoy me as such, but I thought, oh, why can't we both react to it? And then later on, I'm realising that was the beauty of it, the fact that you did have a different reaction, you did bring something different, and the fact is that we had it, and this is what's happened now. If you have the same kind of another person, you go, oh, we both completely agree. It's so kind of boring in this kind of thing. And on your own, when you're going, oh, and this match happened, oh, what did you think? Oh, hang on a minute, that's me doing that now. This is what I thought of it. And the whole point is we had a guy, the Graps of Ras, was the first one I attempted to talk to after it happened. Because I did them, I think you left, and I did a couple of clip shows, like a kind of edit of the first episode, Best of the Women's Revolution. And at that point, thinking, what am I going to do? Is this the end? Because we had a good, to be fair, at that point, we have had a fantastic run as a podcast.
Oh, absolutely.
You know?
It was, it was fun, and I was always, when I was here, I was bringing it. I was never getting to a point where I was kind of phoning it in. I do sound like I'm a wrestler getting interviewed now. It's like, even though Vince McMahon was throwing me shit, I was still fucking knocking it out of the park. I was suggesting ideas, and he was just shooting them down. I was just not happy being a mid-carder, man. The IC top was good for a while. Couldn't have it ever, though.
But this is the thing, and maybe I thought of you as a kind of, well, you're always going to be there as well.
You took me for granted.
Took you for granted, and it was a kind of, whatever we did, it was like, right, oh, this is what we're going to watch. And it became, not repetitive as such, because obviously this year, you're watching the same shows week in, week out, but because it's new TV, you're kind of getting different things, I think, as opposed to kind of being stuck there. And also the kind of show length went from 3.5 hours of us, because we used to do it, all day. Do you know what I'm saying? When we record, 4 or 5 an hour, or whatever it is, and then we used to edit that down to about 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
Now it would be, well, when it first started off with me doing it was like half hour, because it was me kind of talking about it and then going, no, that's it. And the problem was with me not keeping up to date with it as well, kind of reading the results. When I was talking about myself, I don't know what I was talking about. So it was nonsense. And it was like, okay, so you either stop it now and go, right, that's the job done, or you start watching the fucking wrestling, you start knowing what you're talking about again, because that's the whole point we started it. I wasn't know-it-all, you fucking know that as well as I do, and I thought, I know what I'm talking about, and it got to a point, because we were doing scripts, and because we were just watching certain matches, I wasn't watching the whole show, and then I wasn't getting the overall arcs, and then predictions, and everything else like that went by, because you're not paying attention, because it's kind of week in, week out thing. Then it changed, and it's like, right, what we're going to do. Got the guy in, and I said to him, here you go. And he goes, what's this? And I said, I've sent you, this is the Graps of Us guy. I said, I've sent you a script. It's about 200 pages. And he goes, what do you want me to do with that? I said, well, you're reading it. You're going to read it. We're going to do what I do on the podcast. I give Dan a script. He reads it.
So basically,
we do a show.
So basically, your kind of first instinct was, right, it kind of looks like Dan. Can you read? Yes. Right.
Yeah. Yes. That was the thing. And he was like, well, I don't really want to do this. And I was going, okay, well, let's talk about Raw and SmackDown. And it was like, what do you think of Raw? It's not very good. Oh, no, it's really good. What do you think of SmackDown? Oh, it's really... And it wasn't what I wanted.
It was basically kind of like what we'd say about a wrestling match when we first started. Oh, he had good aerial ability.
Yeah, and not, when something's bad, you need to call it, whether it be AEW, Impact, WWE, and you always did, I always did. And this guy was like, okay, no. Did a couple of, and I'll tell you what was weird, I did one with Select Match Podcast, and it was a kind of 2-on-1, because they were a double team. And it kind of, not upset me as such, because I really enjoyed doing it with those guys. Did a Halloween special, did Head in the Cell. But to see, because they had only just started their show. So they'd been together for about a year. So they had all that, that cute banter we had in that fucking first time where we were doing it. And it was like, oh, and it was kind of like, I said to the guy, well, it'll be alright, just wait for 4 years, and he's kind of doing it, because it was still resentful to you, and it was that thing, because it was like, this is our podcast, and you've gone now, and what the fuck do I do? You've left me with the baby, so to speak, and I don't want to be dramatic, but that's what you do, when it comes.
It was more of a toddler, to be fair, come on. 4 years old, for fuck's sake. Yeah. 5 years old.
So 5 years old, and then it was like, right, let's have a look at a couple of guys who are really interested in Twitter, maybe help them out with the podcast. Like one was a guy from New York, and I thought that would be quite a cool little hookup. We did it. We did the AEW show, and it just kind of... It was a bit awkward at first, you know, like it was with everything, I suppose. And then it kind of meshed because we had different opinions. The same thing with Jaxie and Monty with NXT as well, the kind of humour. And then it got to a point where, do you know what, I actually feel quite comfortable again. Got to the Christmas show and I thought, right, Dan, how are you feeling now? Because obviously, you know, the stuff that's happened with you and, of course, the burnout with the podcast and everything else that was going on, I felt from you had a kind of refreshed energy. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I did. I kind of needed to step away to realise, you know, it was... Because, you know, I'd come away from here and I'd be buzzing after having a good time and a good laugh and that. But then, towards the end, it was kind of like, you know, I was just reading... something, you know, and it was, you know, I was putting my heart into it, but again, you know, not fully fledged. But coming back, you know, I did feel, you know, reinvigorated. I think it was a few months since we'd last kind of recorded and spent a bit of time together. Bearing in mind, you know, we've kind of known each other, nearly 2 decades.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's kind of been moments... You know, we spent a lot of time with each other at the beginning, like, you know, kind of growing up as...
Yeah, then he took my
teenagers.
wrestling tapes, and then, you know, you get that story.
Yeah. Anyway, I gave them to Jared to give back to you. That's my last story.
Oh, it's maybe Jared. But like I said, you had a refresh energy, so it was a bit awkward, I think, you know, when you come back. Because the thing is, with what I do with those three, is I do a script myself, like we're doing a bit now. Got a script in front of me, so I know the kind of bullet points, and then their job, so to speak, is what do you think of the match? You know, and it helped us, because you remember what we used to do at the end of pay-per-views, where we go back and look and go, right, what do you think of the first match? What do you think of the second match? That basically became the show. And then that got extended of, like, me talking through the match of going, this happened, I'll get a reaction from that after the match. And it's still, what do you think of the match out of 5? Predictions, polls. Twitter's really helped as well with the polls, because then you get the kind of reaction from that as well. It's just a shame with Twitter that we just didn't... If we'd kept going, do you know what I mean? And if we have a chance to do it every day, but this is the thing, and I don't think it's, you know, with the podcast and even with the fans listening now, you know, it's 24 hours, can't continuously do it. And even with, you know, 2 or 3 people, wherever it is, it's just not feasibly possible unless you've got a team. You know, Conrad Thompson's got all these, he's got a huge team behind him that you kind of do all the social media stuff. But it's not a case of that, it's just kind of what happens. But like I say, you being back here, and especially your history, and I think I needed to get over it. Do you know what I mean? I think there's a point of me that goes, well, it happened, and what do we do now? Am I still resentful for that, or do we kind of move on? You know, did you have any thoughts of kind of that as well, or?
You know, again, it's kind of like going back to an ex. You know, it's kind of like, fucking hell, some of the arguments we had with each other, you know, and in an hour's time, we know we're going to be on that bed and it's going to be like, what the fuck have I done? Yeah. But, you know, this one, I didn't kind of jump back on the sofa or jump back into the podcast chair with you. It was kind of like, you know, and I didn't get resentment and regret after, because it kind of I wasn't hate podcasting with you, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It was more of a like, you know, oh, you know, this was good and that, and we can kind of, we know each other well enough to kind of be able to banter about certain things, how I deserted you and how you cried like a little fucking bitch.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But to be able to talk about it is incredible, considering where we were with the podcast and what happened to where we were. Because I don't even think I announced it. I think I just said, well, Dan, at the moment in time, you know, go for now on, the cunt, you know. I was saying, like, I can't remember.
I heard.
But anyway, let's get back on show, because like I said, we have been doing this since 2015. We did have, actually, a podcast last year when we were putting stuff together of the greatest matches of the years as well that we did. But we talk about, I mean, when I mentioned to you, what's your favourite match since 2015, since we were doing a podcast, kind of what springs to mind for you in that memory? Because I always remember the year had when The Undertaker lost to Roman Reigns and he put his stuff on the ground. And I went and listened back to see, it was a really beautiful moment of talking about his retirement. And it was just you and me arguing, you going, he's fucking retired. I go, he's not retired. Yes, he has. Yes, he has. I was like, right. So any moments that spring to mind or any great matches?
Well, there's obviously, you know, you can't discredit even though it was kind of fucked up at the moment in time, AJ Styles, his debut, Randy Orton winning the Rumble, obviously for me, it's been great watching that. Seeing live events as well, seeing kind of Oscar's match with Ember Moon, I think that was a great moment, just being able to be there. I think there was a brilliant tag match for the main event as well, which was like two of my guys going with two of your guys. I think it was McIntyre and Ali B going against Andrade and Bobby Roode.
Yeah.
In an absolute, it's kind of like it was a brilliant match to be able to be there and watch it, live in person. But for calling, I think it would have to be, it's definitely going to be an NXT TakeOver event. I think, Finn Balor against Samoa Joe for the NXT Championship kind of stands out in my mind a bit.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, there's so many, Pete Dunne versus Tyler Bate for the UK title, Chicago, that was incredible. And the live events that we saw during that time, and even going back, and I'm just going to try and, like I say, it's incredible when you think about it. In 2016, right, we were lucky enough to meet Drew McIntyre. And after a match in a small leisure centre that we were, there we spoke, of course, of the hopes of potential return to the WWE. At that point, he hadn't done it. And skip forward 5 years, a little leisure centre, to being basically one of the top guys in WWE. His opponent, the day that we had saw it, was Will Ospreay, who is now the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship, the first Briton to ever hold a World Heavyweight Championship in Japan. And we saw that in 150 people, Dan. You think about the impact on that show and the other shows that we saw with the Young Bucks and Where Are They Now? Rich Swann, what has he just done? Is he a part of the show as well? Uhaa Nation, Apollo Crews. People that we've forgotten about. Ricochet.
Well, I think, I was just about to say with Ricochet, because with Ricochet, again, like Uhaa Nation, he was kind of a relative unknown. With Drew McIntyre, we'd kind of like, we'd known that he'd been in the WWE. We know his history with being the chosen one and that, he was kind of... the way he was going, it was kind of inevitable that he was going to end up back in WWE in one way or another. With Ricochet, Apollo Crews, and Will Ospreay, for example, them, it's kind of like, fucking, they have actually achieved their dream. It could have been any one of them ones in the ring that we'd seen at that moment in time, who was fortunate enough to be in the ring going against the Young Bucks. Kind of like Ricochet's elevation as well. It's like, Ricochet signed for NXT. What? Fuck,
yeah.
It was kind of like blew my mind. It's like, I met him, I've got a brilliant photo with him, I've got a brilliant story. Kind of like, as soon as I meet a wrestling fan, bang, I'm on my phone, I'm swiping through the pictures. I kind of pull up the picture of me and Ricochet. I've actually cut you out of it. I don't mean to be a dick.
No, you always do, yeah.
But then you've got a picture of just you and
me and Drew McIntyre.
I haven't got any fucking pictures of that because I'm the cunt behind the camera. And James wasn't like, oh, would you like to meet? It was like, no, oh, hi Drew, this Drew, that Drew, everything Drew. No, would you like a picture with the fucking WWE champion? No, mate. Dick.
Look. But what is incredible when you think, like I say, we saw that in 2016 in Sittingbourne, that the last time we saw WWE Raw together is the last time that WWE has been in the UK, Dan. That was 2019 we saw it. It didn't come in 2020, obviously, due to the pandemic, and it's still not come in 2021. We decided against not buying tickets, and they never come back. That's the incredible thing about it. Even the last show we went to, in the end of 2019, I think it was in Maidstone to see Joey Ryan and Jordan Devlin. Jordan Devlin, of course, became Cruiserweight champion. Soon after that, he just had a ladder match with Santos Escobar to take over Stand and Deliver. And the Joey Ryan thing, we were slap bang in the middle of speaking out 6 months later. When you talk about, being in the middle of something as it's going on. We have known British wrestling since that point, and then we were right bang in the middle of it.
So something from there, kind of quotes that haven't aged well. God, I wish Joey Ryan would give me the lollipop from his trunks. And you were so angry when you didn't get it. You were so angry. You didn't get a lollipop that had touched Joey Ryan's penis.
But you look at the history on that. Even that show that could have been nothing actually turned out to be something as big as that. And I think that just shows you the shows that we went to in the past as well together. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm hoping NXT UK takeover happens, so Volta can be seen by us, and of course AEW, because they were going to have Fighter Fest. come over. And I mean, to sing Jericho's theme tune is something that needs to be ticked off the list. You know, I think apart from WrestleMania, and if WrestleMania 40 comes to Wembley, then fucking you can tick it off. If not, if it comes to New York, then I'll be speaking to the Ultimate One. But anyway, but like I say, and that's the whole point of going to a live event back then or back when it goes, because that's kind of the thing that I think we've been sorting in 2015 or 2014. And that kind of started us off to get back into it, to start watching wrestling and doing the podcast in itself. So we've talked about that kind of thing. We're going to move on now to your thoughts on the Jericho and Austin podcast. Because you did watch, you are a fan of the Broken Skull sessions, aren't you?
I am, yeah. I think I've watched all of them. I think there's a couple with current day superstars that I've not watched because it kind of really doesn't, you know, they haven't had a career yet. They haven't had kind of like chance to experience the stories and the ribbing and the things that kind of used to happen, as I like to call it, back in the day. You know, so they kind of don't interest me. The Undertaker one, brilliant. Kane, brilliant.
It's Kane!
It's Kane! Randy Orton, Drew McIntyre one. I think that one, it's kind of like, because he's a wrestler that I've kind of watched, and he's an absolute fan favourite as well. So, you know, he has Broken Skull session.
You were talking about Drew McIntyre, something interesting he said about Randy Orton on there, weren't you?
Absolutely, yeah. It kind of goes towards when he kind of came back to WWE and that, and he was talking about his time with Randy Orton and working with him kind of helped elevate him, and he kind of owes a fair bit of success to Randy Orton, and you know where he's come to now as well.
Yeah, that and the Orton one's quite funny because he's always drinking with Austin throughout as well. You know?
Well, it's kind of like Randy. Oh yeah, I'm a non-drinker and that, and Austin's kind of like, he mentions it was Undertaker's bottle of Jack Daniels, and he's like, "Oh, Undertaker's, you say?" It's like, "Oh, okay, there, go on, then we'll have a couple of shots." And he has a good laugh. I think it's the same bottle that Drew McIntyre drinks from in the one, because he does his after Randy Orton's one, doesn't he? So he's kind of like, I think he finishes it with Drew, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Or no, he finishes it with Jericho.
He finishes it with Orton, doesn't he?
With
He
Jericho.
finishes it with Jericho. I have watched him, I promise, because the one was there as well. They're quite good ones. But the one we're going to talk about in more detail now is, of course, the Chris Jericho one, AEW. Now, what were your thoughts about it, first and foremost, that the Forbidden Door had been opened?
Well, this so-called Forbidden Door, it's quite an interesting one, but who better to do it than Jericho? I think he's kind of like, he's a bloke that's been about. He knows the score. He's not an idiot. He's not a stupid idiot.
Yes, you idiot.
And I think it is good to kind of, you kind of start seeing a breach forming. Maybe there is a possibility that Kenny Omega's going to try and get the last 2 Infinity Stones out of Vince McMahon's
cold dead hands. That would happen, but.
But yeah, it was. I think as soon as I found out about, I texted you and I said we got to do a podcast about it. It was kind
and
of.
I
something
said,
that,
new number, who dis?
You're like, who?
I still wasn't over it.
I was like, Dan, what? Dan, and he's like, Dan. And Jenkins. Oh, Dan Jenkins, my mate. How you doing? And then it was kind of like, no, Dan White. We've done the podcast together, and he's like, I've done so many fucking podcasts. But anyway. When he finally eventually made me send him a selfie, add him on Facebook.
Proof of ID, yeah.
I had to send my driving licence over and that, and kind of, I had to send him my COVID vaccination records. We had to, I said we had to absolutely do a podcast about this because it is something that's, it's not been touched yet, has it?
No, not yet. And it's credible. The story behind it was that Austin asked Vince McMahon, and Vince just said, yeah, do it if you want. And maybe AEW is not a threat, or maybe it is. And we see the show kicking off with Jericho detailing how AEW came to be, noting how various names, mainstream and non-mainstream, signed contracts with the company. So we did have the bit of AEW talk.
Relative unknowns, like, the Jerichos, the Guerreros, the Benoits. I think the landscape of wrestling would have changed for the better. WCW probably wouldn't have gone out of business. I think it would have still been thriving to this day.
Yeah. Jericho noted how he visited Vince McMahon's house during a Raw Booker meeting whilst being under contract with WCW. He recalled how he ate brownies with Vince McMahon, which ended up being a test if he can keep quiet and visit him. And then they both went for the second brownie, I do believe, and Vince said, "You can have that if you want, chap.
You should never deny a man a second."
Damn it. You weren't sure if it was a test. And then we recalled how he saw the Millennium Clock at a post office, which gave him the idea for his debut on Raw. Jericho and Stone Cold both complimented The Rock on his in-ring work and promo skills while watching Jericho's WWE debut. This was part, Dan, of Dan's dream debuts, a segment we tried for about all of 4 weeks.
So yeah, again, another one of my ideas, absolutely fucking shot down. Oh yeah, we'd do it for a couple of weeks. You'd get fucking bored of it.
Well, did we do it? You didn't do it because you were bored of it.
Every WNR podcast meeting we had, and we had none, I brought it up. I had some on my own without you.
Jericho noted how people are angry with him for immediately coming into the company and getting the top spot. He then mentioned how he found out he'd be winning the world title, noting he heard Vince tell The Undertaker in catering. There's a long thing about working with China, being Intercontinental Champion, of course, feud with Benoit's and stuff. Nearly when Triple H or Hebner did the fast count and the reaction that he got then, and finally winning the Undisputed Championship. It's crazy. It only took 2 years for him to debut August 99 and then win the Undisputed title in end of 01, isn't it?
It is crazy, yeah. And, I think that is kind of giving Jericho what he's deserved, because he is a workhorse, absolutely phenomenal on the mic, brilliant in the ring. Whether he's going against a bigger guy, a smaller guy, he can kind of keep up to pace with whoever he's in the ring with, and he's very well with his kind of, he's just ring ability as well.
Yeah, it's a bit weird that he's in catering and Vince McMahon going, "Hey, that man, that's going to be your champ."
No, do you know? I think the line was, sorry to take it away from you, but you know how your company's going down the crapper when you put the title on this guy.
Well, Jericho noted they wanted the retirement match to be one where he's seen as a coward and "I'm sorry, I love you" scenario.
He wants to be dragged kicking and screaming from the arena. I think he actually says about it, which is I'd love to see someone go, not going up crying, kissing the family members. No, I don't want to. You can imagine Jericho doing that as well, like kind of getting forcibly taken out of never to be seen again in a wrestling ring.
Jericho complimented John Cena as one of his favourite opponents. He then mentioned how Jimmy Jacobs proposed him the list of Jericho. He said that Vince didn't let anyone else say "stupid idiot" in a promo, and he worked for him. I think that's right. He said that Vince wasn't present for the Festival of Friendship edition of Raw, which led to the people in charge trying to change the segment. Jericho messaged Vince and told him to go ahead with it. He said the original plan was for him to beat Owens for the Universal title in the main event of Mania, with Brock beating him for the title before he exited the company. However, plans changed when Goldberg came in. Didn't anger Jericho as such, but like he said, that was the kind of beginning of the end, to think this is not going to happen. He then mentioned how he felt like a serial killer with his Painmaker attire in New Japan Pro Wrestling. And this is, again, we've talked about Jericho changing his character each and every, short hair Jericho, suit Jericho, into the kind of the Painmaker in New Japan in his match against Kenny Omega as well. Do you think that was, and you're going to tell it straighter than probably anybody else, do you think that was the moment where it all kind of, the nucleus for AEW, for what the future held for those two men, kind of happened at that point in time?
I think the seed was planted when they had an absolutely fucking huge draw in their first match in Japan. Chris Jericho, someone somewhere just went ping like that. They made a few phone calls. "Daddy, can I have some money? I want to buy." And that's kind of where it started. I think they done like the first match. But I like with Jericho, like everything he does, there's he credits something or someone for it, which is, this band here, his makeup, it was kind of like Kiss derived. It was brilliant, how he's kind of taken a little bit from here, a little bit from there, and, he's made it his own, but kind of crazy as well.
Yeah, I think without a doubt, and then he talks about his scrap match against The Undertaker at the first Saudi Arabia show. He turned it down to face Tetsuya Naito. Instead, that match went to Rusev, so I guess anybody that faced or was scheduled to face Undertaker at a Saudi Arabia event should be in AEW sooner rather than later.
Absolutely, yeah. What are you going to do if you're Jericho? You're going to be obviously losing to The Undertaker.
Yeah.
100% losing to The Undertaker, having to get carted out in that, or having what Dave Meltzer would call a 17-star match in Japan.
Well, he said having fans back at the Daily's place felt like Madison Square Garden. He said that Orange Cassidy asked him whether he sold a move too long during their feud. However, he couldn't give an answer. There was no crowd reaction. Then he finished by thanking Vince McMahon, W, and Tony Khan for allowing him to do the podcast. So what were your final... One of the things I found interesting was was him saying him and JR were the only AEW had worldwide names at the start. What were your... I mean, Jericho don't put himself over too much, does he? But what were your thoughts on the entire show?
I thought it was great. The fact that they kind of said after, we only literally cut 15 minutes of this whole entire conversation and that was due to, not being relevant as opposed to talking about taboo things. They kind of went on to mention everything, everyone. Jericho goes on to say a lot about Don Callis and, what he does, Kenny Omega, Young Bucks, and, I'm hoping it could be the start of something beautiful. It's, you never know. You never can tell what's going to happen in the future, but hopefully, I would love to see an invasion style thing where, they're not just turning up at their door and fucking things rolling down, something actually happens.
Yeah. Well, you never know with the Forbidden Door being open. All right, before we wrap up and talk about experience on the WNR, we'll move on to games because we haven't played games a long time. And Dan, you know what I want you to do with your mouth right now. So right now, for a first time in a very, very long time, I want to play Elephant or F1.
Okay, let me just sort out my paperwork then.
Can you explain to everybody what the game is, just in case they haven't heard it?
Well, Elephant or F1 for our new listeners. Everyone else, you can just twiddle your thumbs at this moment in time. But basically, I'll make a noise with my mouth that sounds something like this. And James has to decipher whether it's an elephant or an F1 car because everyone knows they sound remarkably similar.
They do indeed. So, Dan, whenever you're ready with your mouth, make me happy.
Do I need to be on my knees for this, though?
I don't mind.
You ready for the first one?
Oh, that's a great one to start, Dan. Oh, do you know what? It does take me back. I'd rather do this for 2.5 hours than anything else. But I'm going to say, because I'm not buying time with my answer, thinking about it, that is an F1 car.
That was indeed, James, and more specifically, it was the F1 car going into the gravel in the last Formula One race.
Get in there, you slag! All right, next one up.
You've been actually, not only have you been doing your wrestling research, you've been doing your Elephant and F1 research. You've been listening to every single game of Elephant and F1 we've had, and you've kind of analysed it and overanalysed it from a heartbeat. What
do you think the pie chart's for?
Well, you've got a pie chart of your favourite bars and you've got a bar chart of your favourite pies.
Hey, but
Right, are you ready for number 2?
I am.
Hey, number 2.
Hey, number 1. God, do you know what? I watched the F1 the other day and I did see a little bit of an incident, but that would have nothing to do with it because that, sir, is an elephant.
James, for the second time today, you are correct.
2 out of 2. Can I get a perfect score? 3 for 3. Never been done before.
You've never done it.
In
I think
6
you've
years.
got 3 wrong,
Yes.
but you've never got 3 right.
6 years.
Let's see, can it be an anniversary miracle? Not if I have anything to do with it. Right, anyway. Here we go.
Oh. Do you know what? I would say that would be an elephant, but I don't think it is. I think it's an car stopping suddenly in the pit lane. Dan, I'm going to say F1 car.
It was an F1 car, James. You have 3 out of 3. But it was next to a zoo, and the elephant was louder than the F1 car. The noise you heard was the elephant. Unfortunately, James, you do not score this time.
Dun, dun, dun. It'd be like Willy Wonka. It'd be like, good day, sir. Good day. You get nothing, sir. Nothing. So after that excitement, we're going to play WWE Magazine. We're going to start off with a magazine, because then we're going to move on down, because it's called the 6th anniversary. We're going to play What's in the Bag? But before we play that, let's play WWE Magazine. So what is WWE Magazine that we play as grown adults together?
Well, James, we go into supermarkets, normally wearing long trench coats and such, to buy the WWE Kids magazine. And as funny as it may seem, I got the WrestleMania one, thinking it was the latest one, but I haven't got the latest one. James has the latest one, so James is going to be delving into my bag, and I'm going to be delving into his bag, and he's going to be delving into his own bag, and I'm going to be delving into my own bag, which is going to be a bag off.
Well, this is School of WWE, so it means I've got 5 WWE gifts inside.
Mine's the WrestleMania edition, and I've got like about 10.
Whoa, you've got a big one.
I've got loads.
So, I'll tell you what, I'll try and open it. I'll go first, because obviously, and I'll get one of the biggest ones that I can. And, wow, I've got a New Day... What the fuck is that?
That looks like a New Day earphone holder. You kind of wrap your earphones up and you put it in there, and it protects them from getting up and discombobulated.
Really?
Yes.
That's actually quite smart. I like that. Yeah. All right. Cool.
Do you ever wear earphones?
Well, yeah, but I can't fit them in there. I'm showing down at the moment.
Am I delving into your bag or mine?
You can delve into my bag. It's open at worst.
We'll empty your bag first.
Empty my sack first.
I have got a packet of Slam Attacks trading card game reload. It's got Nikki Cross, AJ Styles, The Undertaker, and...
Open them up then, see who you got.
Drew McIntyre.
Come on, let's see who you got.
All right.
I reckon you've got Randy Orton.
I have Shinsuke fucking Nakamura.
Yeah.
I have Bianca Belair.
Whoa.
I have Io Shirai.
Whoa.
Banzai!
That's Yokozuna.
I have someone who don't work for wrestling no more.
Oh, Tucker.
I have Eric.
Eric.
And I have the Messiah, the Icons card of Seth frickin'
Wow,
Rollins.
the Icons card, boys and girls. I have got, wow, of course I have. It's a Drew McIntyre. Get this, and an Oscar one. See,
wow.
Jaxie's favourite is Oscar, mine's McIntyre. There you go, you see? That's
And they never saw Oscar again. Right.
Go into my bag.
Close my... Why have I got to close my eyes?
You like closing
your eyes? This one
your
feels
eyes.
a really weird shape. Oh. James, what have you done in that bag?
Oh, my word.
Wow, this is title clash. You've got to pin your opponent to win the title. And there's a title disc, and it's a 2-player game. So, James, I think...
Oh, we got to play it.
During lunch, or do you want to play it now?
Well, we got to play it now. Come on, how do you play it?
I don't know. There's no instructions on how to
What do you
play
mean there's
it.
no instructions? Well, hang on. Whilst he's working out the instructions... Oh, my God, I got stickers. Right, name me a wrestler, Dan.
Nikki Cross.
Yeah, she's on here,
Edge.
yeah. Yes.
Tatanka.
No.
Hulk Hogan.
No.
Big Boss Man.
No.
Big Van Vader.
You were doing so fucking...
Undertaker.
Keep going alphabetically there with B's.
B. Bianca Belair. Britt Baker. No, she's not on that
No.
one. Buddy Murphy.
What am I doing?
10. Todd Ninja. Ring. Hello. Come in.
Their hands.
Hands.
Yeah. What do you want to do with these hands?
Get them.
Yeah.
Braun Strowman.
Get them. Get them. Got Naomi, Seth Rollins again. He's popular. Sonya Fire and Desire. Dan setting up the game. Oh my God, it looks so Why'd you have to put it on your nipples for? I don't know. Take it off.
You have to get naked. I think we have to get naked. Right.
Oh my
Do you want
word.
the Seth Rollins or Roman Reigns?
I'll have the Seth Rollins because I know
you've got the Seth Rollins and the Seth Rollins base.
Right, okay, that's awesome.
I've got Roman Reigns.
Yeah.
And a Roman Reigns base.
Right. Now
what? I don't know. We've got James. What kind of bearing is that?
That is a MR52ZZ.
It's
So
an MR52. What would you do with an MR52?
oh, there you go. Look, I've put mine on top so I win.
You got the title.
I
well
win.
done.
There you go. Right. Dan, you're one next. Gone. Is it? You have a WrestleMania bag, a WrestleMania
Your
magazine
bag
now.
empty, right.
Mine is gone.
So I am going to... I have got a WrestleMania, and it says, I'm getting ready for WrestleMania. Come back later if you do not want to be disturbed. Or it's time for WrestleMania. Come on in.
If you see it rocking, don't come a knocking. I've got... Oh, wow. Look at this. WrestleMania Hollywood. It's a cardboard clipboard.
Clacker.
March 28th, 2021. WrestleMania action.
Oh, James, you're going to have to use that every time we start the podcast. All right. Rumbling about. Oh, this one feels nice. Oh, my God.
What is it?
WrestleMania bow tie.
Oh, my God, wear it. You've got to wear it.
I knew it was the right time to wear my Dickie bow shirt tie. Dickie shirt. Yeah.
Will it fit on or will it choke you to death? Or shall we find out on the podcast together? That'll fit round your neck. Come on. Oh, my God. That looks awesome. Wow, that fits.
I can't believe
It's a bit tight. What else we got?
feels good.
Right, I mean, mine. Oh my God! It's the Miz Shutter Shades. Come on now, because I'm the Miz, and can't open this to save my life. Oh my God, your face has gone purple with that bow tie.
Is it upside down? Is it the Miz way?
No, it's WWE. It looks actually. I'm about to say it looks cool, but probably not.
Nearly as cool as them shades.
Yeah.
Did I actually reach?
Hey, yeah, just about.
I'm going to have to take this off.
It is. Take your bow tie off. Oh!
It is a poster. It's got Kevin Owens, Alexa Bliss, Oscar, Drew McIntyre, Braun Strowman, Biggie, New Day, most of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Wow, the back is awesome. It's got legends on it.
Oh, wow.
Wow, that is actually quite cool.
That's actually a lush poster.
Right, I have got... What the flip is that? It's a WrestleMania wristband. Yeah, it is. And it's on my wrist now. Forever.
Your hand's turning purple.
Yeah, it's alright. I don't need circulation. I'm fine.
And
what you got?
Oh, I've got a WrestleMania sticker. That's actually quite lush.
That is quite cool, actually. WrestleMania. Alright, but we're going to take it up a level because obviously it's young. So magazine gifts are just not enough. So we're going to play What's in the Bag? I've got a bag of toys that were bought for us for the WNR podcast. So we're going to rattle in them and grab Matt. Dan, would you be first to go into my bag and get one out?
This one. It is. It's a figure. It's either going to be Seth Rollins, Owens, Dakota Kai, Roderick Strong, or Sheamus.
And who is it?
I think it's going to be Roderick Strong. Oh, it's Kevin Owens.
Kevin
Stun
Owens.
Owens stun.
Well, that's quite a cool little figure. And I got in the same series, I've got Dakota Kai. Yeah, Kota. Yeah. Go on, Dan, fiddle about in the box.
This is a big bag. I have got Shawn Michaels. Wow, that is cool. With interchangeable bottom half. Is Paul Ellering included?
No, Paul Ellering is a part of it. So Shawn Michaels is the start of it. And another elite is WrestleMania China with Chucky Doll as well.
Oh, I see.
Part of the action there. What else we got in there? Is that the last thing in there?
Oh, I think so. Oh, it's a Macho Man Randy Savage pop vinyl. Special edition.
Special edition. And I'm just opening up another box that has just arrived as we speak. And inside, oh my words.
China.
It's a China pop to go with the China Elite figure there. And also...
James, that is the biggest box I've ever seen in my life.
I have no idea what this is. Dan?
You handing me over...
I'm handing over a massive box. It might be kids' toys, I'm not sure. Open it up, be very careful. Very careful with China. What we got?
You've got a box of blue wrapping! You've got loads of, bubble wrap.
Oh.
Wow, that's...
What else is in there? What the fuck is it?
It looks like 2 boiled eggs.
Oh my God.
It's a Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock in a ring pop vinyl. That is actually awesome.
Wow, that looks fucking brilliant.
That actually looks really lush.
We will try and post these Twitter as well. They've all come. So the China, Drew McIntyre pop, and The Rock and Austin. Wow.
Macho Man.
Macho Man as well. Wow, what an anniversary. Wow. Thank you for all those gifts. They are brilliant. We will definitely enjoy them. Right, Dan, so we've had so much fun. So let's wrap up now. How's your experience been on the WNR podcast? What are you going to take? Well, we've mended bridges today. You see, we've fixed them.
We have, yeah. Opening another forbidden door and me entering your forbidden door and spending a very nice amount of time inside your warm, inviting environment.
Well, I'm just glad, Dan, you're back in the fold now. I will say that. This was really fun. And like I said, the next time you'll be back will be next week for NXT UK. And then, I might say, end of the month for maybe some AEW Dynamite if you're up for it.
Oh.
Let's throw cat amongst pigeons there. We'll see what happens. But Dan, like I said, You have enjoyed your experience on the WNR podcast, I'm sure you have. We have had fun. There's no doubt about it. And it's brilliant to have you on, Dan. So I'd just like to say thank you again for everything that you've done. You're as much a part of the podcast now than you ever have been. So thank you very much.
Well, James, again, you kind of don't have as much credit as it's due. This has all kind of come from the little seed in your mind, and you've kind of progressed it. It was kind of you that come and shoved the laptop in front of us and said, look, watching wrestling, why not talk about it? You've kind of, even when I've been in a financially unstable place, you said, look, come round, I'll get the kebab in, I'll do this for you, and I appreciate everything that you do for me, is not just as a podcast partner, friend, you're actually a friend in real life as well.
Oh, I really appreciate it, Dan, and thank you very much for joining us on the anniversary show, and I'll see you next week.
Did I read that bit right?
Yeah, you did perfectly, yeah. The next person's joined me, first joined on the WNR307 AEW All Out. It's now time for the ultimate one. So how you doing, man? Like I say, thank you very much for joining us on the anniversary show. You all well, yeah?
Yes, I am, sir. Relaxing here in New York City, not, waiting for everything to open up. You know how that is, I know you guys they're still on lockdown, so.
We are still on lockdown, but right now, like I said, you're joining us May 4th, 2021, and it's the WNR Podcast 7th year anniversary. The WNR Podcast has been in it for 7 years. Of course, you've been along us with this journey now for, I think, nearly a year now, definitely over 6 months for the AEW show.
Yeah. It's been 6 months, yeah, I think so.
It has been. So, like I said, the Ultimate One joining us here for the anniversary show. And I've got 4 for you, sir, if you don't mind. The first one was, where were you May 4th, 2015? Because that was the very first episode of the WNR podcast.
May 4th, 2015. I had not started my podcast. That was even in my mind back then. But I was following up. I got real into New Japan Pro Wrestling. Even though I was following it, but I had stopped for many years, and I was getting really into the Bullet Club stuff, the Ring of Honor working relationship with New Japan. I did watch a little bit of WWE stuff. Back then, I probably didn't follow a lot of podcasters. Back then, I think I was following Cole Cabana, so the whole CM Punk thing was real big back then. So I still was real into wrestling. I've been into wrestling since I was 5, and I'm gonna be 51. This month, so that's where I was at. I'm still enjoying wrestling, and having fun, enjoying it.
Well, this is a thing, because obviously we've had you on, and it's been fun talking about wrestling, but kind of get to know each other a little bit better, or get to know you just for the listener themselves. So obviously you've been a wrestling fan, like you said, for 45 years now.
40,
What kind of drew you into professional wrestling when you were a young kid, so to speak? What was your first?
Well, I know my parents used to watch, back then was WWF, and they were real into Bruno Sammartino. And in those days, they used to give wrestling at 5 o'clock on Sundays, and my mom would put it. I would watch it. I remember the Larry Sabisco, Bruno Sammartino, Tony Garea. And then once I got into that, then I got about 6 years later, then I started watching Florida Championship Wrestling. They used to give it on Mondays, almost like 11 o'clock at night. I followed the Dusty Rhodes, the Jerry Grahams, and then I got real into it back when I was 13 in '83. Started collecting wrestling magazine, and I started noticing that there was more than NWA and WWF back then. There was the AWA, World Class. So I've been following wrestling for so long that now I got real hooked in my teenage years. I follow every promotion you can imagine here in the United States, even in Puerto Rico. And then when I got into New Japan, in those days they had Big Bad Vader, Great Muta, Chono, Ricky Shosu, or I can name a bunch of people. I got real into it. So, the love for it, since I was young. I always loved watching wrestling. Even the Chavo Guerrero Sr. I used to watch. I remember they used to get that on Wednesdays on the Spanish channel here in the United States. So, I just love wrestling, man. and it's just something that I enjoy. It's just like my hobby. I love talking about it. I love the history of it. So I just love it, man.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's exactly the same for me as well. Like I said, with podcast 2015, maybe hadn't been as popular as they kind of are now, so to speak. But I was listening to a few of them and thinking, I've been watching wrestling quite a while, actually. I think I know what I'm talking about. I've got an opinion. I wouldn't mind kind of getting it across. And when you start it, I mean, you think to yourself, oh, how long is it going to last? I mean, I wouldn't have known back then it would have lasted for fucking that amount of time.
Yeah,
when did you?
Go ahead.
No, I'm about to say, like, when did you feel when did you start thinking, oh, maybe I should do a podcast, or was it a case of technology as opposed to? I mean, because with all the years of experience, you could have, saying 10, 15 years ago, so to speak,
Yeah, and you're right, and it's funny that I think about that because when I started, I decided to do a podcast. It was back in, this is gonna be my May 31st makes my 2-year anniversary that I've done the Chokeslam Wrestling Report podcast, and I started off in YouTube before I started the audio. So it was one day I just decided, look, I'm at this age, I would like to start my own business. I would like to start something that I enjoy, and I'm like, I find myself every single day in the dirt sheets, looking for information, finding out what's the latest trend, what's going on with the wrestling business, what's going on with somebody at WWE, blah, blah, blah. So one day I said, you know what? Then by then, podcasts, you got all these wrestling podcasts out there. And I said, you know what? I'm passionate about wrestling, pro wrestling. Why not do a podcast? I know it's not easy because you got 20,000 other people out there doing podcasts and claiming they're the greatest, they're the best in the wrestling community, whatever. And I said, you know what? I know what, if I start a podcast, I know what I'm talking about because I've been in so many eras. Like again, I'm gonna be 51, and I've been in so many eras. I've been in the Bruno Sammartino eras, the Superstar Billy Graham, Dusty Rhodes. Then I remember the Four Horsemen era, the Ric Flairs and all that stuff. The NWO, the DX, the Attitude era. I've been through all those eras that I know if I sit down and talk about it with someone who is knowledgeable about the wrestling business, we're gonna have a great conversation. This is why I love coming to your show because, you may not have the same experience I have as many years, but you know what you're talking about, And I like having conversations like that, and I like delivering, stuff to the wrestling fans, whether they like me or not. It may not be a popular opinion, whatever I think about a certain match, certain person, certain wrestler, whatever. But I love doing what I love doing that stuff in the podcast. So, and you're gonna win fanfare, and you may lose some because not everybody's gonna agree with you, but. I just, like I said, I like doing it, and May 31st will be my 2-year anniversary, and and I'm having fun. I can't complain about it,
Yeah, about that, like I said, when we started May 4th, like I said, 2015, doing that, and it was just 3 guys kind of just talking about wrestling. On the laptop, the audio equipment was awful. You could hardly hear us. But we watched our first event, and the thing is, we started off as a WWE Network Review. That's what the WNR stands for. Yeah. And there was a couple of moments. I mean, first off, thanks to the listeners, because the people what are listening, have been consistent for so long. And I'd just like to thank everybody that's ever, been listening to the show to week in, week out, so to speak. One of the most important things we had was the WWE, because when you're doing a podcast, and I think for the WNR podcast we hit about 5,000 people a week, with the listeners and stuff like this. But we weren't sure what kind of impact we were having up until WWE tried to shut us down a couple of years ago, because of the popularity and because of them wanting to get into podcast. And it kind of made us think, what do we do? And that opened up Impact, that opened up New Japan, that opened up AEW, that opened up all these other kind of, avenues, so to speak. That was really important. And another thing as well was, of course, we had the co-host with Dan, and then moving on to, like I said to yourself, and the first time we're doing it and wondering what it's going to be like, kind of back and forth. But you've settled as kind of part of the WNR team now, so to speak. And it's kind of crazy that 2 kind of individuals who are kind of might not have anything in common apart from a love of professional wrestling,
Yeah, but you see, this is the thing. This is why I just don't do WWE, because a lot of these podcasters today, they rely a lot on WWE. And there's nothing wrong with that because, WWE they find ways they can always do the retro, the watch along stuff and all that. A lot of podcasters do that. I feel that why talk about WWE when there's other promotions out there that could be exposed. You know what I'm saying? That's why I was happy when AEW came into the scene. I mean, and I came in on the podcast scene just right, like 5 months before AEW opened, the Wednesday nights stuff. So it was perfect. And by when I started on May 31st, 2019, I was already covering New Japan. I was covering Ring of Honor, maybe a little bit of WWE here, but I will go and get the big stories, But this is the thing when you have a podcast and you're able to, mix it up with different stuff, and then it's hard to find somebody who is, and like you said, we're already a team. We've been doing this since August, I think, or probably longer, and we're a team now because you got your podcast, I got mine, but I come in and I enjoy having conversations with you because we're passionate about the wrestling business, and we can have a conversation without getting crazy and you don't know what you're talking about. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Agree to disagree because you got your stuff as far as how you love your wrestling. I got my way. I see things different, but it's at the end of the day, people enjoy our conversation.
And this is what we that's why you're part of the anniversary show, and this is why we've been doing this for so long as well. But we have still got a couple of questions. Of course, the podcast has been starting since 2015. I don't know if it's top of your head or if what would be your favourite match since 2015? If you could just say this one match is been my pick since, for the past kind of 6, what would you go? Even when I say that to you, what are the first couple of matches that come to the top of your head?
Yeah, and I'm laughing over here because I already know the match that in my head that I say to this day. I haven't seen no one top, and that's the Kenny Omega versus Okada, Dominion 2018. That match was 1 hour and 6 minutes. Now, mind you, I've seen a lot of great matches since then, since 2015 to now. But even the Nakamura with AJ Styles, which was like 35 minutes, but nothing beats to me that I've seen that does not beat is the Dominion match between Kenny Omega versus Okada for the IWGP belt. That was 1 hour 6 minutes, and I enjoyed every single minute. I could sit down. You would put that match every day for me, and I watch it. That's how good it was. and it's not it's not because I'm a Kenny Omega fan, whatever. But I like good quality matches, and if you could put a show like that, 1 hour and 6 minutes, 2 out of 3 falls. And you can put that type of show. I mean, I don't think there's any match right now that ranks number 1 in my view as far as the best match since 2015.
Excellent choice. Also, we had the Forbidden Door opening up for WWE and AEW when Chris went on Stone Cold Steve Austin podcast. We thought it maybe changed the world. Did you watch it, and what were your thoughts on Jericho being on the Stone Cold podcast?
Well, first of all, I've watched bits and clips of it because this is just my opinion, and maybe other people may think I'm crazy. But the Jericho and Austin stuff, I think, I don't even think it had to do anything with the Forbidden Door. I mean, a lot of people will think it's a Forbidden Door because we know WWE is not going to work with AEW ever. It was more to me, the way I look at it, it was more to me of Chris Jericho saying, look, yeah, I'll go to your show and then we'll talk about AEW, but my contract is up in 2022, so I want to make sure I can come back and get into the Hall of Fame. That's what it comes down to it, the way I see it, Even though it was Austin's idea because of the tweets back and forth with him and Jericho, and McMahon okayed it, but why would McMahon not okay it? You know what I'm saying? If he doesn't okay it, then it makes him look like this promoter who's, is sour or whatever. McMahon knows that Jericho wants to be in the Hall of Fame. So that's the way I look at it as far as that, with him, dealing with Austin. Because like I said, his contract is up in 2022 with AEW. After that, the guy's going to be, 50-51. His career is almost over. why not go back to WWE where where your career was really really made, and you made you was influenced by, you was part of the Money in the Bank, the first guy who came up with that concept, the list. We could go all day about it, but that's the way I look at it. I look at it as Jericho saying, look, I'm gonna come to your show, I'm gonna talk about the AEW, but at the same time, just letting you know that when my contract is up, I'm gonna go back to WWE, and I hope you put me in the Hall of Fame.
Well, there we go, and that's exactly what we wanted. And the thing is about it, and the thing I especially like about having you on the show is our opinions don't always match up. Mm-hmm. And when you've got that difference, and you can discuss it, and that's what the world is. The world is people with slightly different opinions and getting on, to see the kind of bigger picture overall. And final question, probably the most important one I'm going to ask you. How have you found your experience on the WNR being on since August, September time?
Listen, I can never tell you no. Let's put it out, and because I enjoy every minute of it. Not only that, but it's in the UK. I enjoy talking to you about it. We have fun. We got different opinions about certain stuff, and we don't try to outdo each other. It's just two guys who love the business, who loves professional wrestling. You're an Impact fan, AEW fan. I'm a fan of pretty much everything, probably except WWE right now. You know what I'm saying? And I enjoy it. I enjoy it because I'm able to give my opinions and what I see, and you give me your opinion, and I like talking about wrestling. It's a good thing, and not only that, I get to get heard in UK, and exposure for my brand, and and I love it, man. I love being in your show, so never hesitate to hit me up and say, hey, can you do a show? Now when me starting again, with everything opening up here in New York, then maybe the schedule may be different now, because I go back to work, whatever. So but if you ask me, let's do a podcast, if I'm available Saturday or Sunday or even a Friday night, I'm down, man. I'm down, man. I love doing this stuff with you, man, because it's just fun.
Like I said, it's all well and good helping, I'll help a podcast out or I'll help this person out, but it's when you find someone, like I said, that you can have a proper chat to. It feels like, it's weirdly enough that even though we've never met, it feels like I know you in a weird way, because it's sort of like, there's certain things when it comes to wrestling, and you can hear from your experience and the kind of knowledge that you've got as well, and your opinion. You're not scared to upset a few people. You're not doing it just for a case of kind of like, oh, it will get higher listeners or whatever it is. It's what you feel and what you think. And when there's, I think, especially you and I together on AEW and Impact shows that we do together, I think that definitely comes across. And it's been one of the best things to actually have you on the show, and long may it continue. Where like I said, our schedules are really busy, but if we can get together, we will definitely do it.
Yeah, it's like even I don't know if you listen to my shows when I mention your name, especially when I talk about Impact, because I know you love your Impact, but I do mention you because I think in the last 6-7 months, I have enjoyed doing the podcast with you, and I feel like, we haven't met in person, but I feel like we already established a friendship that I know that, I mean, I gotta tell you, I would love to have you on my show, so we could just, kick it and talk about all type of stuff. I don't care what. But I like going to your show because, like I said, it's I'm not, you don't, let me put it this way, you don't limit me of telling me, oh, don't say that, because just, what I'm saying, you allow me to speak freely, what I'm saying, and I enjoy doing it. And we may agree to disagree, but we enjoy ourselves talking about it, because this is the way podcasts should be. What I'm saying? If you got another podcast and he's let's for example a WWE fan, and he only sees your WWE universe, sees things this way, it's not for him to be like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. What I'm saying? Good discussion, great conversation makes a podcast even better, especially when you're trying to collaborate together, what I'm saying, and expand your brand, So like I said, dude, anytime you need me to come to your show, you come to the show. I gotta make time to put you in my show because I want to put you on my Chokeslam Wrestling Report sooner or later.
Well, that's like I say, it's always a pleasure having you on, and I'd just like to thank you again for joining us for this anniversary because, yeah, we started in 2015, but you're as part of the show in 2021 as anybody else is, so you have to be on, you know?
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And like I said, I want to give thanks to your fans, to the people who listen to you in the UK. And again, I'm trying to get my brand out there in UK. I got my stuff out there in my YouTube channel on the Power TV4. I think we're probably dealing with Fight TV also with my YouTube channel. So that, you know, I got a little stuff going on. I'm also part of the Jonas Podcast Network. I'm sure you guys from the UK has heard of it, the WrestlingJournals.com. They got like 21 podcasts of wrestling in that network. So I'm part of that. But, you know, like I say, I love doing this with you because I feel comfortable. And like I said, I can never say no to you unless it's something is crazy that I can't make it. But you know, I'm always here whenever you need me, brother.
No problems. I really appreciate it. And again, thank you for joining us today and always, you know, and can't wait for AEW Blood and Guts to have a little bit more fun.
Yes, definitely. Blood and Guts, that's something I hope. You know what? It's funny that you mentioned that. I'm wondering, are they going to put double cage or they're going to just put one cage?
I think it's double cages, but
how are they going to fit that in the daily place?
This is what I'm thinking as well. How they're going to do it might turn it the other way around. It's really, really interesting. And like I said, interesting times in all the professional wrestling, whether it be WWE, Impact, AEW, New Japan. There's something out there for everyone as well, isn't there? You know. Yeah.
Now the wrestling is coming back. If you think about it, I think almost every promotion is back. I mean, the only one that I still see that's still struggling a little bit is NWA and whatnot. So, but the NWA, they got a pay-per-view coming up June 6th. June 6th? Yeah, June 6th. So that's going to be entertaining. So wrestling is back in a lot of in the United States. So it's just a matter of time before, you know, you start probably reviewing other stuff or whatnot. I don't review NWA because I don't get a chance to watch. They charge you now on Fight TV if you want to watch NWA. No more YouTube. So, you know, but I try to catch up on stuff like that, you know. And like I said, you know, I enjoy doing the podcast, man, and you know, and happy anniversary, brother.
Oh, thank you very much, mate. Really, really appreciate it. And again, like I said, thank you for joining us. And like I said, much love from the UK. All right.
All right. Thank you very much from New York City, buddy.
Well, that was brilliant there by the Ultimate One. But I tell you something, it's a damn shame, a real damn shame that this anniversary show hasn't got Monty on the show. It's a damn shame.
Hello. I'm right here, James.
Oh, Monty! Oh, my word!
Yeah, just like that, magic.
Where did you come from?
Well, where I usually come from, right in the southern part of the United States, Louisiana to be exact. But I'm here now, and you know what's up?
Oh my God! Thank God I didn't carry on that. Yeah, thank God I didn't carry on what I was going to say afterwards. I mean, whoa, that was.
Okay, I probably should have waited that out.
Well, like I said, the one and only Monty, the first podcast you were actually on the show was the WNR311 NXT TakeOver 31. How long ago does it seem? It seems to be doing this forever, doesn't it? You know?
Yeah, that's forever ago, right? That is just an entire century feels like it has passed since then, and that's crazy. I'm still relatively new to the family, but at the same time, I don't feel new.
Well, that's what we can say. We're going to get into a few more details and kind of, you know, get the listener to get to know you and even myself a little bit better, so to speak. But the first question is, because where were you May 4th, 2015?
Okay, so May 4th, 2015. I was 19, so in my second semester of undergrad. So it was May, so I was most likely, you know, shit-faced or doing something with the devil's lettuce, as I've heard people call it, in celebration of survival of another term. That's literally the words, the only thing I can think of that could have been going on that year at that time for me. So yeah, I was a stupid college kid, you know, just trying to survive.
Well, at that time, it was me with two other guys in a room next to a laptop trying to be funny about professional wrestling, because that was the very first time, May 4th, 2015, that we did an episode of the WNR podcast. Which, again, a lot has changed in that meantime. So you say in 2015, during that time, well, were you watching wrestling? What were you kind of into at that point? And even
Well,
go on.
I've been into wrestling since I was very, very young. I don't know exactly how old I was, but I do remember seeing Kane entrance at a very young age at a house show, I believe, and he scared the hell out of me. So I'm young enough to be that kid. So you know, I've been watching wrestling that long, so I was into wrestling even then. You know, I vividly remember SummerSlam 2015, I believe it was. I think that was that year, or it was either the year before that. Either way it goes, I vividly remember being in my dorm room watching John Cena get absolutely destroyed against Brock Lesnar. So I definitely was still in the wrestling big at that time.
What was it like? I said, your earliest memory. What was it like you saw at a point and thought, do you know what? That wrestling's for me. That's what I love. You know, when did you become sort of not a die-hard fan, so to speak? When did you think, do you know what? This is what I want to, you know, watch.
Oh God, man. Probably the first time. It was either the first time I seen Stone Cold Steve Austin celebrate, you know, whooping a lot of ass. So like the beer celebration, like I was in love. Like you watch someone beat up everyone, beat up the entire locker room, and then he just drinks beer over everyone, or he comes to the ring with the beer truck. I remember vivid, like different little moments in my life that made me realize, okay, this stuff is absolutely insane, but it's my type of insane. Like that's what I want to watch. You know, I was into wrestling more than like that your average cartoon at an age that you probably shouldn't have been watching wrestling. Looking back. Because, you know, like I said, I was young in like 2000. So The Rock,
Were you?
my first time seeing The Rock, I fell in love. Like, come on, man, it's The Rock. Like, I don't even remember what he was doing. It's just everything about The Rock was for me. So it was just hilarious.
Well,
But,
I remember you know, you growing up in the Attitude Era, and kind of everybody was a wrestler at that point. You know, everybody kind of,
everyone.
you know, like a Rumble, mate. Everybody knew, and it was kind of to know more about it than anybody else did. Was like I kind of became like the cool one, because they were like, oh, you know which one the Hardy Boys are, you know, and you know which one, you know, that kind of thing.
Right.
When did you realise that you were the kind of the wrestling friend out of your group? You know, you thought, oh, I've kept this longer than they have, you know.
Oh yes. Well, you know what? It was like you said. I think it has to be after the Attitude Era, because at the time everyone knew everything, or at least thought they knew everything. I was one of those guys who, like, every video game cycle, when WWE would put out a game, all the way from like WrestleMania 2000 on the Nintendo to like the Here Comes the Pains and all of those great games that everyone probably has plenty of, SmackDown versus Raw. All those memories that kept me into it. I found out that I was the person who was way into wrestling too much when, like you said, it was like right around some of those drier periods of wrestling, and I'm still watching. Like I remember when, I don't know if anybody remembers this terrible angle, but it was the night I questioned, should I ever watch this again? And that was the Katie Vick night with Triple H. And like I'm a little older by 2002, so you know I'm starting to, and it was just all I remember at the time, not fully understanding everything, but just knowing this is nasty.
But it's the thing, and the whole point is that
it was horrible. Oh,
you don't
God,
want to be embarrassed by it. You don't want to be embarrassed, and then like
exactly.
your mum or one of your friends walks in. What's Triple H doing in that casket? What is that, Kane? You go, no, this is entertainment.
Yeah, like how do you explain it? And exactly, those are always the things you have to explain. And then, like you said, you grow up and people, you know, people find out it's predetermined. I know a lot of people went away then once we got around the age when people found that fact out. Ooh, wow, it's predetermined. I can't believe you guys didn't figure that out. But anyway, I was the guy who even through all of that, I'm like, yeah, I still love it. And that's when I realized, okay, I actually really love this stuff, because a lot of people found that out and just was in my age group at the time where I come from. They found that out and they were starting to question why you still watch it,
Yeah,
and then that's when you realize you're not a casual, when you start battling those people who come to ask you crazy stuff like they don't watch anything for entertainment purposes. Some of these guys love, Star Wars or, Avengers, like the Avengers, but cannot imagine why I can enjoy pro wrestling. It's insane to me.
Well, this is the thing, and like the figures that you have, or that I have as well, I've gone from like figures or toys that you play with to collectibles.
Right.
And there's a certain age, where people go, why have you got so many toys? And I go, don't you mean why have I got so many collectible items?
Exactly, though. That's my point. Or like with merch, like sometimes I just wear merch everywhere and I don't realize that I'm that guy who's just walking around in other people's merch with phrases that people are reading and trying to understand. I remember I was like, I'm like one of the only Bo Dallas marks in the world, probably. So I'm walking around with Bo leave on and having to explain it to everybody, and I'm giving people thumbs up like a weirdo in the store. But that's just how much I like wrestling. Like when I'm into it, I can do I love the goofy stuff too. So yeah, it is what it is. Like you said, the ups and downs of being a lifelong fan of this stuff.
But without a doubt, I remember getting into an argument with an old woman at a wedding because she had the tenacity to say that wrestling was fake. Like, I wanted to punch her in the face because I was trying to explain, like, well, it's exactly like, you watch Emmerdale, do you? You watch fucking
Right.
Emmerdale? But at the time, like when you're 12 or 13 years old and you're trying to fight, for some reason you feel like you have to fight the corner of wrestling as well,
Exactly. It's insane. Like you feel like you're like you're just like a defender. I'm defending my little precious little guilty pleasure. It's the same way people are about I think anime, and like the Japanese cartoons. Like I enjoy a couple of them, but I know people who are really like trying to defend having pictures of those anime girls on their wall and all that type of stuff. So it's the same type of thing. And I've seen pro wrestling fans and anime fans go at it. It's hilarious how it works out, honestly.
I was about to say to you, one of my I say people from work brought in one with animation about an octopus, and at that point I thought that's too far for me.
I get it.
Of course,
it's a line. It's a fine line. I get it.
Each to their own. We talk about wrestling games quickly because obviously, a lot of wrestling games on the WNR podcast. Of course, a lot of changes over the past few years, and we were lucky enough last year to have a guy who actually knew about, I say computing because obviously I don't know that much, and managed to set up the PlayStation to play Here Comes the Pain, and then 64 for No Mercy as well. Now, by the sounds of it, you're obviously into wrestling games. What was your favourite wrestling game, either out of the two of them or overall as well, that you just constantly played, as a kid? Because, there's some of them that just so pick up. I think the early SmackDowns as well are really underrated.
Definitely. SmackDown 2 was the beginning, I think, for me. But I think SmackDown Shut Your Mouth, SmackDown Just Bring It, I think those are the corny names they used to have. Of course, Here Comes the Pain, one of the best games ever. I used to play that game. It didn't have it's crazy, a lot of games now you want like commentary, you want this, you want that. That game only had like a music track on it, no commentary, and it was some of the funnest stuff ever, like one of the best rosters ever. Like you just had unlimited fun with Here Comes the Pain. I grew up on WrestleMania 2000 though. I got robbed of actually getting a chance to enjoy No Mercy. Like I've heard of the hype. I think I've heard that it's one of the greatest campaigns of all time. I wish I would have had a chance to play that. I've played pretty much everything like the GameCube Day of Reckoning games. I didn't really get into I haven't really got into some of the older school games, but I played virtual pro wrestling. Like I was blessed, man. I got a chance to play a lot of things growing up, and that's, like I said, that kept me into wrestling. Like even keeping up with the WWE 2K series, or just before that, and they just called it like WWE 12. That's another one of my favorites. I used to love the Road to WrestleMania little storyline. So yeah, I'm heavy into the wrestling games. Not the most recent one they put out. That was a bad experience, but to say the least. But they have a great history. That's the reason why I believe it's so much hype. After at WrestleMania, you've seen a lot of hype for the video game trailer, even though they didn't show much. A lot of people were very excited about that for the series to kind of come back to life. So wrestling games are a part of the culture. I think it has this nice little pocket of people who every year we're looking for something, a roster update or something. So yeah,
this is the thing, and even I remember back in the day getting a multi-tap out, and plugging in the controllers and having a Royal Rumble with my friends and saying to them, getting one of them and saying, right, we're going to team up until the very end, right? Let's get all of them out, and then when you finally get down to the final 3 and he's busy eliminating him, you get rid of him, piss him off so he couldn't get back in, get your elimination, you win the Rumble.
On everyone. Never go into a Royal Rumble with me. I'm turning on you. It may be even quicker than I used to love saying, let's go to the final 2. I wouldn't even wait until like the ring is full. I just catch you slipping.
But you can't let him get back into the match because otherwise.
That's fair though. I understand that.
That's
though. You get another chance. Yeah, exactly. But I'm real. Like you said, I'm a backstabber, pro in the Royal Rumble. Yeah, man, I love it though. Like even like you said, over the year, I think the thing me and my friends do is we get in an elimination chamber and just go crazy on Here Comes the Pain. You know what I mean? Everyone had loved Brock Lesnar. They had him like literally flipping people with clotheslines. It was insane. It was insanity. All the options you had back in the day too, man. It was, yeah, man. Those were the days. Those were the days.
I'll tell you what, you've just given me, and I don't usually get ideas straight away, but we should do at some point, whenever it is, like a WNR Royal Rumble, and get everybody that does the show in the Rumble, have commentate on it, and just go to fucking war.
Oh man, that sounds like a lot of fun, man. I have no problem with it. I'm telling you, just don't be surprised if I prevail. That's all. I'm talking. I'm talking ahead of time.
Well, the thing is, I know Jaxie is a proper gamer, so I've not really got into details about it because it would be a bit like, trying to talk about something I have no idea. Whereas I know how to press the X and the square sometimes. I might be playing a bit. Oh, how do you play this again? And then get on it like that, but get a head up. But like
gotta play possum. Yeah, it's a strategy, man. Gotta have a strategy.
What about that? So it's a shame you can't do the Jerry King Law, just go underneath the ring and just hide for a little. Where did James go? I didn't see him there. Anyway, we talk about games, of course, and early wrestling memories. But what point did you say to yourself? Because I think there was a point in 2015 when I've been watching majority of stuff, professional wrestling wise, and listening to a few podcasts. And of course, podcasts maybe wasn't as popular back then as they are now, but I thought I've got a voice and I want to be able to have my opinion be heard about wrestling. When did you start to think to yourself, and when did you even start with the podcast and start actually talking about professional wrestling?
I officially started in in the end of 2019, so like right before 2020. So yeah, my podcast officially started as I was gonna just talk about everything I like to talk about. So that was like American football, basketball, wrestling, and I was gonna try to figure out a way to balance it all. The problem was, once the pandemic happened, sports stopped, and I just okay, well, wrestling kept going. And so my podcast kind of shifted to where I was like, okay, well, I focus only on wrestling. It's still going on. And I've always kind of just wanted to do this. Like, I fell in love with wrestling podcasts before I fell in love with even the form of, just the podcasting format in general. Like, Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast, like Jericho's podcast, JR. I listened to those religiously. Just like I mentioned in undergrad, like in 2015, 2014, I was probably listening to those podcasts the way we would do it back. I want to say back then because I feel old, but it wasn't that long ago. We still kind of do it similarly now. But anyway, so yeah, I've always kind of enjoyed the format And then I was like, I ended up going to college in media, so I would do interviews and I would be able to learn things about doing things with audio. Anyway, I always wanted to try to get into sports radio or wrestling, right? Like just like kind of like what Sam Roberts get a chance to do on the radio, like on Sirius or something. But even if that's not the case, I always kind of just wanted to do that. I've always been opinionated. Like in my friend group, I have friends who enjoy wrestling, and most out of all of my friends, I probably was the only one who had like some who wanted to have a lot of deeper things done, whether it has something to do with backstage stuff or whether it has something to do with booking. A lot of my friends, they enjoy wrestling, for what it is, but they don't necessarily, they're not as invested in it as I may be. I guess that's the way I can look at it. But either way it goes, I've always had these opinions. Like I used to do this. What I'm doing with you now, I used to do this at my high school lunch table with my friends, whether it was talking about sports, whether it was talking about wrestling then, whether it was talking about girls. This is what I've always been good at this, especially just doing it in this format. And
But I'm about to say sorry, but I was like, that's the trick though, and I think with podcasting, especially that you found as well, it is more of a conversation about just shooting the shit, so to speak, as opposed to it is kind of hitting targets and talking about certain things,
Right, like you have a plan going in, but for the most part, like you said, you just have a conversation, man. Just let your opinions be known. Listen, crack a joke here and there, have a good time, and I think wrestling is one of those subjects that's perfect for. And that's another thing. Like as much as I love to criticize, talk wrestling, enjoy wrestling, it's still just wrestling to me. It's something I would like to just have fun and talk about. We don't have to argue every time. It's not always. People have different philosophies, different thought process about wrestling, and I get it. But I think we all can enjoy wrestling for what it is, and I think that's what my podcasting style is. I just want you to listen to somebody who's sitting back and enjoying the show just like you are. But I got a couple opinions. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't agree, but just come give it a listen. So, yeah, that's kind of how it came up, if you see what I mean.
But the trick is not to take yourself too seriously, and I think
exactly,
and we'll get onto the kind of experiences with each other, but I think the NXT one has more humour in it than most of the other shows that I do. Of course, the podcast's been starting since 2015. I don't know if it's top of your head or if what would be your favourite match since 2015?
So, it's so many matches. This is so unfair. Like, I know I'm leaving out something great. You know what I mean? That's the thing. The first thing that has popped in my head since hearing this question is Kenny Omega and Kazuchika Okada. I may be completely biased to that Wrestle Kingdom 11 match, but it's just I really, really loved it. That match really gave me an appreciation for not just pro wrestling, but just that style of pro wrestling. Like I was one of those guys who, even though I enjoyed matches before that in New Japan, and I still enjoy other matches, I was one of those guys who it had to be certain people for me to get excited. Watching that match has made me pay attention to the entire card differently in New Japan. So like that match kind of changed the way I look at wrestling, especially New Japan's wrestling in particular. But I cannot do this without mentioning anytime AJ Styles and John Cena has touched. All of those matches I love. And of course, Ciampa and Gargano and Takeover in New Orleans. And my last other one is the Best of Super Junior final from 2019 between two guys who fought, I think this morning now. For me, it would be this morning. But yeah, Shingo Takagi and not this morning, they fight tonight. Yeah, tonight. Sorry about that. Shingo Takagi and Will Ospreay in their 2019 Best of Super Juniors match. That very first match in New Japan. That match is close to a perfect match as you get. I think those are the type of matches I think of when you say since 2015. That's the thing that immediately come to mind. I know I'm forgetting other things. Dijakovic and Keith Lee also. Some of those matches are something that come to mind. But yeah, I'm sorry. I know I was supposed to do one match, but I knew I was not. It was no way I was going to be able to just leave one match.
That's the most detail I've had in an answer, so that is really appreciated with that one.
I couldn't do it.
we talk about Japan, and of course we will be back in Japan at the end of the month, where there's been a lot of developments. But I will tell you, I have been watching watched the New Japan Cup. I watched Ospreay's matches throughout the tournament. I will be watching his defense against Shingo's, like I said, tomorrow.
Shingo Takagi, yes, tonight. Tomorrow.
And of course, the Impact developments, and of course AEW. Really looking forward to. I've actually done my homework with that one, so I'm really looking forward to having a look at that. But the Forbidden Door was open between AEW and the WWE because Chris Jericho appeared on the Stone Cold podcast. What was your thoughts when you first heard the news of that, and what were your thoughts on the actual show itself?
I don't see how you can watch that and not be surprised when that happened. It was just I couldn't believe it. I had to check everything. Like I saw Jericho post it, then I think WWE had posted it first or something. So I was just so surprised when I saw the announcement. But it was a nice announcement. I thought it was really, really cool. And the actual podcast that resulted from that announcement was very great. It was two legends, sitting back and just, shooting the shit on the stuff that they've done in the past. And, I was so surprised at how much AEW got referenced, but Jericho did not, hide names or avoid saying them. He said Tony Khan, I think, a couple of times. He definitely mentioned Sammy Guevara at one point. It was cool, man. I thought it was a really cool move. I don't know. I think this is maybe a special case. Maybe for only guys like a Jericho could be able to pull this off. Because I don't know if this means WWE will acknowledge or, continue to do things with AEW. I don't know about that. But it is something that's still like something no one could have expected. And I thought it was a strategic move by WWE too, in a sense, because it happened during the WrestleMania thing and they're trying to launch Peacock with something. So, it did add some traffic for Peacock. So I think that's another plus for it. So I thought it was good business for everyone. A lot of the things that we want when we talk about this Forbidden Door being open, man, this can be great business for everyone, WWE included. So I think it was really, really cool stuff. And I thought the podcast itself was very, very dope. A lot of this stuff I've heard before because I had the pleasure of reading Jericho's first book. But it's cool to, hear him and Austin, go in depth on certain things. And I enjoyed it.
I think it shows that Vince McMahon doesn't sweat AEW whatsoever, no matter what people are trying to say. And also it proves that Jericho is keeping that relationship open because if anybody deserves a Hall of Fame spot, it is Chris Jericho.
Yes, of course. Easily. And I think it'll be done. I think Jericho also can see an opportunity. I'm not saying AEW and WWE would ever work with each other because I don't think Vince would ever do that necessarily. But at the same time, like you said, I don't think AEW is a bigger deal as the internet makes it seem like it is a big. Like they make it seem like everything WWE does has something to do with AEW, and we know that's just not the case. But at the same time, I agree. I think it's cool that Jericho is smart enough to be like, there's no point in trying to, be like bad blood between us type of enemies. Yes, it's a competition. They want to have the best ratings when they air, and they've been doing a good job at that. And I think this is great. I think hopefully this can calm all the internet down. But it's the wrestling internet. They'll find something else. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, we'll find something else to argue about. But yeah, I thought it was a great move. I thought it was a great move on both sides.
I think without a doubt, and I think overall, like I said, it opens the door for future things as well. But finally, what we can talk about is your experience on the WNR podcast. How have you found your time? Because obviously you've been doing this now since September.
Wow.
How has it been, basically? We got to May the following year, so.
This is insane, actually, because like you make a great point that it hasn't even been a year yet, but man, quarantine makes it feel like an eternity. Oh my goodness, everything feels like an eternity. But anyway, my experience has been awesome, man. I've entered an entirely new market. I've never touched any soil outside of America, so it's so cool that I have people from around the world and from different countries speaking to me, and and not only that, and supporting what I do, by proxy, by you allowing me to be on this platform, man. It's cool, man. It's been a valuable experience, for me podcasting, and doing these fun shows, has helped me find my voice in a way. It's always so fun, man. I'm just appreciative. I'm appreciative of all of this, the opportunity and this platform. So, yeah, man, I love it. It's been cool, and I would like to continue to keep doing this, man. It's been fun every single time, and like I said, you added an entirely new element to watching NXT.
Well, I've got some bad news. The reason why you're on here today. No, I'm just.
Wow. Hey, now that's one way to do it. In front of everyone, man, you weren't even gonna stop the tape.
That's harsh.
Right?
Harsh,
so
man.
harsh. What did I do? You got me questioning my entire future.
But this is the thing, and to have such a laugh and a joke with someone that you've never ever met, and to, like I said, through this, be able to speak to him and actually consider us like a friend now, which is so good, that the only kind of thing that you have in common is wrestling, and you build it from there. It just proves that anybody from anywhere can actually get along,
I agree 100%, man. We are probably from two completely different worlds, basically, if you really want to think about like our environments. But like you said, you find common ground on certain things, and a bond can be started from anywhere, like between anyone, and it just shows you, like you said, not only a strength of just like how we can bond, but just the strength of pro wrestling. Also, it just brings people together. It can bring us all together in so many different ways. So yeah, it's cool.
I was going to say, it really, really is, and the 6 years doing it, and there's been loads and loads of changes, but I'd just like to thank you for being a part of this, and you're a bigger part of this, much of a part of it now as kind of the podcast as ever has been as well, so there's no doubt doing the NXT and the Japanese shows, especially NXT, it's something that I know we're definitely going to have a laugh. I think with the Japanese stuff is something that I'm going to learn from, but it's just picking up pieces. But like I say, man, it has been brilliant, and I don't think we don't, I really, really appreciate it. And I know how busy you are, like I said, with life as well. And to make time to come on here, it's worthwhile in my eyes, because for doing it this long and still be able to enjoy it, it's down to the people that I do it with.
Oh yeah, I agree 100%, and I appreciate that, man. Like I said, it's been a great experience, and I'm about to graduate from grad school right now. I'm right on pace to getting this done next month, so this has just been cool. It's been really cool to use this as another form of venting and getting a lot of the frustrations or things I love about wrestling out. So yeah, man, this has been awesome in so many ways, and 6 years and many more to go, hopefully, man.
No, well, thank you very much, and I appreciate you being a part of this. And there's going to be a lot more Monty on the WNR podcast coming up, because in a couple of weeks we have got NXT update, and then at the end of the month we are going to have the lowdown, everything that's happened in Japan this past couple of months as well. But again, Monty, thank you for joining me. It's a very special show, and I will see you in a couple of weeks, buddy. All right?
All righty, man. Thank you. See you later.
And it really wouldn't be an anniversary show without everybody. And of course, the next person was first appearance was the WNR310, was WWE Clash of Champions, and since then along our side to watch everything WWE related, even the best till last. It's Jaxie Scarlett. How you doing, Jaxie? It's a pleasure to have you on the anniversary show.
Yay, thank you for letting me be part of this. It's amazing to come back again and to actually do something a little bit different, but it's crazy to think that we started at Clash of Champions. That seems so long ago.
It really does, and like I said, the road to WrestleMania, from the Rumble as well, and it's crazy, it feels like we've been doing it, well, for me, maybe a lot longer as well, because of just... Yeah.
Well, first and foremost, happy anniversary to WNR podcast.
Oh, thank you very much. And like I said, the whole point of you everybody being on today's show basically is trying to get a little bit better as well. And I'm also going to ask 4 questions, if you don't mind, and maybe a couple others as well.
I'm excited to sort of answer those questions, get to know more about yourself as well, James.
Well, perfect. Well, this is the question I was going to ask you because, of course, it is the anniversary day of the WNR podcast. But where were you May 4th, 2015? Either what you were doing, personally, and what you were watching, wrestling wise and all this kind of stuff. If you can't really remember exactly, don't really mind,
I think that is the beauty of the 21st century, just continuously adapting to sort of being able to look back on these sorts of memories, because all sorts of social media platforms will give you the access to view your timeline. And it was actually really funny because I got sort of a notification come through earlier this week, reminding me that it was kind of this week going into next week that I was on holiday in 2015 in Center Parcs with my family. So yeah, it was a really fun memory to just kind of remember as well.
Well, that's brilliant, because like I said, we know exactly where I was. I was sitting in a little room with my two friends with a laptop around us, trying to record. And honestly, anybody goes and listen to the first episode, it does sound terrible. This is such a more professional feel to it now than it kind of was back then.
I need to go and check your first podcast out. I need to go and kind of compare.
Well, I'll tell you what I did last year as well, because, of course, a lot of things change on the podcast, and, of course, with your introduction and everything else as well. But I went back and did the kind of edit to the first episode as well to try and do like a director's cut. It didn't really improve it, but it added kind of like 45 minutes of nonsense. So
Well, it'll be interesting to hear that, though.
Oh, it was my posh accent and everything. I was like, hello, welcome to the podcast. I just didn't know what I was kind of doing at that point. So I wanted to branch off a couple of things with you. First off, because you've talked about it before, and I've never want to mention, and I just, want to talk about it. You talk about being a twin. And it's not one of these things that I kind of stopped and gone, oh my God, but what is it like being a twin? Because it must be, I don't want to say strange, or is it just incredible? Is it great? What is it actually like?
I feel like every twin's answer is going to be different, but ultimately in my situation, I think being a twin is one of the best things about being me. I absolutely love it. She's my best friend. We don't go more than, a couple hours without speaking to one another, if I'm truly honest. And it is just that greater sense of feeling of knowing that you're never alone ultimately, even when you are alone. Like, especially it's weird, but with a twins bond, mentally, you never feel alone. And I know a lot of people probably don't understand the meaning of that, but I think that's what it's meant to be. I think that's the beauty of being a twin, or being lucky to have been born a twin, is that you're blessed with the ability of mentally never feeling by yourself. And so, yeah, I think it's the best feeling in the world, to be honest. Hopefully we'll be able to get her on a podcast with us soon. Maybe it would be really fun to do one with her. She's just she's kind of the opposite to me, but not the opposite to me, if that makes sense.
Well, this is the thing, and it's not like it's a fact of like that would be fantastic to do, but the whole point is the fact that you're on the show. So I didn't know if it was a case of kind of, what I mean, it's about you as opposed to about anything else, so to speak.
Yeah, well, she's a huge fan of wrestling, and she is a fan of our podcast, so she does actually listen in on our podcasts. So I'm sure she'll actually appreciate the shout out. Hi, Gina.
Oh, hi, Gina. Thank you for listening. And like I said, we can definitely sort something out. We got on to when you started doing, podding and stuff like this in a minute. But I just want to talk about your kind of first wrestling memory. What was the thing that kind of got you into wrestling, where you saw, for me, it's kind of Undertaker in 1992 against Kamala. I saw that as a young lad, 4 or 5, and up with the kind of theatrics and everything. It's kind of went away from wrestling a little bit, and then the Attitude Era kind of pulled me back in, and I've not really been away since. What was it that you saw that thought, this is for me,
Yeah, I think predominantly a big factor plays into this is my father. My father he had 4 girls. So no boys. And he's a very sports person. He teaches martial arts, Taekwondo. So he's always been sort of very sporty, And he used to be into wrestling as well. I say used to be. He kind of still is, but he doesn't keep up to date with it regularly. And my fondest memory, I think it must have been 1999 where I fully started getting into wrestling, because my fondest memory that I really remember is my dad waking my twin and I up really early in the morning. I think it was on a Sunday. And he told us that we weren't going into school the next day, and brought us downstairs, and he'd paid. This is when we had to pay for the pay-per-view on the channels, and he'd paid for the WrestleMania. And I think it was The Rock versus Stone Cold. I think it was that one. But yeah, that was my fondest memory at getting to stay up at that time for in the UK. It's not starting till about 1 a.m. So, you know, that was like the first time my dad ever had sort of like bend the rules a little bit and let us, you know, not go to school in the morning because we all watched WrestleMania together. And it was probably one of the funnest memories I've got with my father too.
And I think that's, you know, that's a lovely story, and I think British fans deserve a little bit more credit as well, especially when they're a little bit younger, because of the times that the program's on. I mean, back in my day, Raw wasn't on until Friday, and then SmackDown was on at all if you were kind of lucky. But pay-per-views, and to be able to stay up, I don't think American fans realise that it showed dedication. The amount of days missed from school and late for work because of it.
And just, you know, having cool parents that would let us do that.
This is the thing, and the interesting thing about wrestling is sometimes it's harder to admit you're a wrestling fan to the general public as it is to anything else. And I've always been quite glad, you know, my dad's, you know, was showing wrestling when kind of, my mum's always kind of not really sure, but never gone against it. But I think that's an interesting thing where you go, I'm a wrestling fan. People go, well, don't you know it's fake or something like this? And you have to fight that at a young age as well, you know?
Yeah, you do. And do you know what? To be honest, I have to agree. My mum really enjoyed wrestling when it was on the TV as well. It's not something that she would actually put on herself, but if it was put on by myself, my sister, or my dad, she'd sit there and she'd watch it and she'd enjoy it. And I remember my younger sister really loved Chris Jericho. She was a huge Chris Jericho fan, especially back when he was sort of like Y2J era. She had like she was very young and she had like a little teddy bear and she called him Jericho. And I remember that that teddy bear like anything. I wish I need to go back to my parents' house and see if I can try and find it. I'd love to take a picture of it and then tweet it on Twitter to Chris Jericho and say, Jericho, I just wanted to meet your UK teddy bear opposite. Jericho. That'd be so fun.
Well, this is the thing. I remember as a kid having the new kind of WWE figures. I think they were like Jax, and one of my friends had the old kind of Hasbro ones, and we did a swap. And at the time, I thought it was a great deal, and it probably is a great deal looking back on it now. But at that point, my mum had just bought all these new wrestling figures, and I had swapped them out. And she was, and went down to my friend's house, and I remember like a wild west of the two mums facing each other, you know, kind of a swap for wrestling figures, and I'm still friends with him, you know, like I said, 20 years later, but the mum hasn't spoken to me in 20 years.
Yeah, we don't forget easily of those sorts of things, you know. I mean, just being a twin is a bit the same in terms of, you know, you're always, we've got all these action figures, and it's, you know, waking up one day and thinking, no, actually, I want The Rock and you can have Stone Cold, or I want Triple H, and trying to actually swap and make it the better deal.
Honestly, that swapsies back as a kid got us in trouble. But of course, this WNR podcast we talk about since 2015 we started and gone through a lot of changes. And one of the reasons for podcasting for me personally was listening to a lot of people and thinking, not that I knew better, because everybody on Twitter, and I've worked this, I put on Twitter, you can ask them a question. Every wrestling fan wants to seem deemed to be smart, which is not an issue, but is a bit of a problem when you're trying to do a podcast and everybody thinks they know the answer, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I get you.
But we started this as a point of, because I think of a lot of wrestling fans, and I don't know if you agree or not, maybe say, well, this is what you should know before, you know, you start watching, or you should know at least this, or WrestleMania main events, or, you know, who was George Hackenschmidt and, you know, Frank A. Gotch and all those lot back in the day. Oh, you should. But the point of the WNR podcast was to go, right, this is a subject we're looking at. if you don't know anything about it, let's take your hand, you know, and let's kind of go through and we'll together talk about the product. For anybody that's kind of smarter, will maybe know a couple of other things we're talking about. And for those that know nothing about it, can follow on and kind of go there from the start. I think that was the kind of, you know,
from the best in terms of who you really should like in wrestling and who not to. Not being biased, but you should listen to me because I have the best views on that.
But this is and I've never had a problem with other people's views because this is the whole point. Like, I know
Exactly.
my opinion is not going to be that, and that's why I kind of like having other people on as well, because the fact is that I can kind of, not the straight man as such, but I can put down what's happened and then they can give an opinion and get the shit for it, you know?
I get you.
So that was my reasoning for podcasting. I mean, what was your reasoning for kind of getting into it? When did you get into it and why?
So that's quite interesting because I didn't actually if you'd have told me a few years ago that I was going to be podcasting about wrestling, I would have told you bullshit. Because it really did start out as I explained before. I got back into wrestling. I kind of stopped around the John Cena era, where it was just getting a bit predominant, where everyone was starting to really hate on the product, and I kind of just like dipped out of it, and then got word back in 2018 that they were holding the first ever 30 female Royal Rumble. So predominantly I started tweeting about wrestling from watching that the Royal Rumble, the Women Royal Rumble, and actually got back into wrestling from that. And yeah, it was through Twitter that I got to make a lot of wrestling friends, including JT Talbot, who is the sort of showrunner of the podcast at O Face Wrestling. And he was just like, you know, you've got some really great views. I really liked seeing your opinions on Twitter. You know, would you fancy, first of all, just sort of being sort of a representative of O-Face and tweeting sort of with the hashtag O-Face Squad sort of thing whenever you're tweeting about wrestling. And so it started like that, and we just got to know each other a lot more and more. And then, yeah, he just slowly but surely started asking if I could start. He does a lot of interviews via Spotify as well as YouTube, with indie wrestlers, mostly females, and he likes to give a big spot on female wrestling, which is something that I really responded well to, obviously, because this was the whole reason as to why I then got back into wrestling. So it kind of like we have this, our sort of points of view were sort of similar in that sense, and it just opened a bigger platform for me. It opened the platform for me tweeting more, into which you found me as well. So yeah, it's kind of grown from there, and so I'm slowly but surely doing a bit more and more with O-Face, as and where I can, because of course JT is over in America, so I'm kind of like the UK correspondent.
Yeah, no, and like I said, and that's really cool. I've checked out a couple of them, obviously, to see it. It is weird kind of seeing you, I'm not going to lie, because...
Yeah, just from hearing my voice and then going to see my face, and like, that's what you look like.
That's it. That's why you'll never, ever see me.
Well, for anyone who does listen to the WNR podcast and would like to see what I look like, feel free to check out at O-Face Wrestling on YouTube and Twitter, and you'll be able to see some of the most recent interviews, one being with the most recent episode dropping of Danny B. We had an interview with her, which was great fun, so please do check that out.
Yeah, without doubt, like I said, and then it breeds on to the WNR, of course. But talking about the WNR podcast, we talk about 2015 being a year that we started, and a lot of things happened since then. And I'm going to ask you quite a big question. What is your favourite match since 2015? I'm going to give you an example, and it's not just because we're talking just talk about women's wrestling. But back in 2015, of course, you had Bayley, Sasha Banks at TakeOver. And that was kind of the match for me that I saw, and I was like, because I've always been a fan of women's wrestling, and Dan, who's been a co-host for most of the time on the podcast, had always been brought up with that kind of bra and panties type style match, and that kind of, and it was trying to show him And everybody, no, if women's wrestling gets taken seriously and we can see what they can do, then it can build. And that's why I'm so proud of what happened at WrestleMania, this year, and watching Mae Young Classic and Evolution pay-per-view and everything like this. And I think I look back and I think that's one of the most important, probably one of my most favourite matches. What about you? Because it's a big question,
Yeah, it is. And do you know what? It's a very difficult question to answer, if I'm truly honest, because, you can go from thinking about all the brands you watch. So, for example, I'm a huge AEW fan as well as an Impact Wrestling fan. So, I don't get to watch them as profusely as I do with WWE, but it's really hard to like pinpoint a match in general from like thinking of all three brands. And then, it just goes to say as well, you got to take into consideration like what really pulled you back into wrestling and things like that. The match that stood out for me was the match between, I think it was it Sasha Banks and Charlotte Flair in the cage match, first ever women's steel cage match.
Hell in a Cell as well.
That's it. Yeah, the Hell in a Cell match. That really stood out for me, and that was like the first match that I could really think. When you asked me that question, that popped into my mind really quickly was that steel cage match, because it really just proved to everyone that women can do it just as good as men in a Hell in a Cell. And I was just really impressed by both women in that match. And that is very rare for me to even bring up a Charlotte Flair match, but it was a brilliant match.
Well, go back to listen to the WNR podcast to get Jaxie's thoughts on Charlotte.
And then you'll find out that this is the only compliment I'm ever giving her.
Like I said, there's so much to look back on in that kind of six as it is, and it's incredible. I mean, there is more wrestling that I forgot that we've watched on the podcast than ever before. I couldn't personally do it. I couldn't do it all, and it's good to have kind of different teams so we can focus on WWE stuff and W and Impact and NXT UK. Because I think if you try, I do speak to guys who try everything, and I just think sometimes it's a little bit impossible, because
I try to sort of like even it out in terms of I'll hear, because I try to keep as up to date via Twitter or YouTube and in terms of wrestling news anyway. So for me, it will be things like, so I hear Kenny Omega's having a match with so-and-so on Impact, so I'll definitely check out this week's Impact. That sort of thing. Or like, I hear John Moxley is actually performing in New Japan, defending his ICWP championship. So then I'll look to go and watch those matches. So I try to keep as up to date as possible from the news that I hear, but it's impossible to keep up to date weekly, especially for a UK fan. I think it would be much easier if we were in the US to be able to try and keep up more up to date in terms of watching. But yeah, when it comes to the time frame over here, no, it's definitely impossible to try and do it all.
No, but sometimes it helps to have no personal life like I do, and then you can kind of fit it in. So you do Raw. So this is my week, So like Tuesday will be Raw to catch up on, and maybe finish that on Wednesday, and then you've got Wednesday. So Thursday would then be NXT that you watch. Friday night would be Impact, because of course Impact was on the Thursday night as it was. Saturday night would be SmackDown, and then you'd finish off the week with AEW. And then if you've got time on the next day, the Monday, you do the NXT UK, and then that's how you continue your week forever.
Like, it feels like that it's just an incredible backlog for you. I mean, for me, I definitely, I think the perks sometimes from working from home is that I do have the opportunity during lunch to be able to watch these programs shortly after. Now, I'm not going to lie, and this is only the past week or so, I've been really busy at work, so I've kind of like given up trying to actually catch up on Raw. So I'll just watch a catch-up program on YouTube with Raw. But I usually try to keep up to date with at least, I'm really into AEW at the moment, so I really love like their YouTube build-up programs of Elevation and Dark. So usually on a lunchtime for a Monday and a Tuesday, I will watch AEW's sort of Elevation and Dark. I usually tend to watch NXT come on the Wednesday, whether or not it's during lunch or in the evening. Yeah, I'll stay up and watch SmackDown on a Friday. And that is predominantly because I am a gamer as well, so that's gaming times for me as well, so I could stay up. But yeah, and then I just try to catch up on everything else sort of like over the weekend after that.
Yeah, no, Raw's my background. And the Raw is I do stuff and then I come back to it and then I think, oh,
Yeah.
it's still going. That's great.
Oh, it's another advert again.
The thing that really fucks me, though, and again, I have mentioned this before the podcast, is with AEW, and you get a pay-per-view and you think, well, I've got a Monday to watch it, and it's 4.5 hours long, and you're going, for fuck.
That's the biggest ball ache. It is the ball ache when it comes to pay-per-views as of late. It's trying to catch up on watching them.
It is, and then Impact's like, let's do a special. It's like, fuck's sake, right? Everybody calm down, right?
When they did that with NXT as well, with the Wednesday and Thursday, I was like, I don't have enough time on my hands. There is 2 of me, but I don't have enough time.
And then Impact going, no, we got to no, you can do that next week. All right, let's just see what we've got first.
Yeah.
But we're talking about the W Network, because of course the W Network has stuff as well, like the W24 and Icons and all this kind of stuff. We're going to speak on it quickly. The Jericho Austin podcast, the Broken Skull Sessions. Did you watch it?
Yes, I did. Of course I did. I think any wrestling fan is stupid to have not watched it.
And what were your thoughts on it? You know, on where Chris Jericho maybe come across, AEW. So, I mean, Stone Cold's just a pro as well, but what were your thoughts behind it?
Yes, just to see these two back together brought just all kinds of nostalgia out of me. I just really loved the Attitude Era with both of these two in. Just watching it and actually getting to see some of their like previous stuff, especially focusing more on Jericho, was just. It was such a hint of nostalgia that it just made you feel warm and fuzzy inside. I really enjoyed it. I loved hearing about how my favorite part was hearing about how MJ came up, how Y2J came up with the Y2J pose through watching MJ perform Michael Jackson perform, and how much like of a build up he got from just being in one stance, and then the minute he moves, that pop. And how Jericho managed to actually make that work for him too. He's so brilliant at what he does that he could see something and then build on that. He's just such an idealist. It was really, really fun to watch.
I'll tell you what was strange as well, because, you know, living in that moment when Jericho made his debut until he won the title, an awful long time. But when you think it's only kind of 2 years from his, you know, August 1999 he debuted, and then December 2001, you know, the kind of undisputed world champion. It's quite a short amount of time, and the amount of career changes, like the complete difference from the kind of coming back as like the Jericho in 2006 to the suit wearing, short haired one feuding with Shawn Michaels, you know. And you just go, it's completely different.
And everything like that. He's such a comedian. Like when you watch him through sort of the years and especially working with complete different types of wrestlers in every unique type of way, you know, even going back to when he would work alongside China and things like that. He's such a comedian, and it just shows you how much he really has accomplished. He's such a veteran in the business, and I think that any promotion that works with him are just always going to end up better off for it, because his ideas really reflect on how creative he is in the ring and outside of the ring. Giving him a mic or not giving him a mic, he's able to just sort of generate that pop factor that just really wows the crowd. I think it's actually helped that he's you know, part of this rock star band as well, with Fozzy. I think that, you know, he's got that unique rock star vibe to him as well. Like he's got that sort of all honed down to him. It's kind of like he's managed to break both the music business and the wrestling business, and he's just done it effortlessly.
Yeah, about that. And, you know, if you check him out on the Jay and Silent Bob reboot as well, where he plays a Ku Klux Klansman, and the kind of the things that he's gone off to do as well. He's even the interesting thing with AEW about when he first went there, and him and JR were kind of star names, so to speak, and building up the rest of the roster. I mean, they did touch it. Obviously, they didn't go into full detail, but I think Stone Cold is just brilliant, and he stopped doing his podcast now, the Broken Skull Sessions. But I mean, my God, that man is just fantastic as well.
Yeah, he really is. I mean, I don't think that there's ever going to be anyone like, even when Austin was a heel, everyone loved him. Like, I think that Jericho and Austin both have unique qualities about each other that really brought well together. So a lot of fans, whether it be AEW or WWE, could just thoroughly really enjoy seeing these two veterans just really talking about how they really did help change the business, and the way that they changed it. It was just for the better, allowing a lot more creativity, allowing a lot more of the sort of what I'd say controversial stars to sort of get more of the limelight. They're not all the pretty boys that they're like rock stars or drinking beer and throwing the bird up to everyone and stuff like that. They really broke boundaries, and I think like it really helped the business to grow, as in wrestling, not just WWE.
No, without a shadow of a doubt. And like I said, the forbidden door is open now with Jericho on Austin. And even if people are going, well, his contract expires next year, he just wants to go into the WWE Hall of Fame. Well, so what? If there's anybody that deserves it, it's Chris Jericho.
I think he should. I think it would be really pathetic of Vince to leave Chris Jericho out of it, because of, out of everything that's happened since AEW debuted as a show, Vince was ultimately always 100% aware that Jericho was going to AEW. It wasn't like a John Moxley where they thought he was going to be coming back after a bit of a break and then he just went and switched, or a Miro who literally just dropped it and then switched. Do you know what I mean? So I think Vince has already gone through great lengths and still respects Jericho a lot as to allow him to be on the Broken Skull session. So I really do think that Jericho will end up probably being in the Hall of Fame, and I think that Vince will allow that, because apart from Stone Cold Steve Austin, I don't know any wrestling fan, whether or not they're solely WWE or solely AEW, I don't know any wrestling fan that dislikes Chris Jericho because of the work he's done. So you can't deny the work he's done.
Well, about to say, without a shadow of a doubt, completely agree with you there. Okay, so the last thing we're going to talk about is the experience of the WNR. So this is when, first off, just like to say, I mean, the WNR podcast has gone through a lot of changes. And of course, last year with the pandemic and with Dan as well kind of moving away, because me and him had hosted a show, like I said, for 5 years leading up to the anniversary. And then because of COVID and everything else that was going on personally, professionally, just didn't have time at that point. So it kind of, you get to a point in the crossroads where you wonder what you're going to do, whether you're going to, kind of think, is this the end now? We've been doing it, or what's left? And luckily for me, it was, like I said, finding you, finding Monty, and finding, of course, the Ultimate One as well. And, asking if you'd be on the WNR, and then not only, saying yes and being on the show, but the kind of the banter and the back and forth, and the kind of, it's like it's a friendship struck up, even though we've never met each other,
Exactly. And I think it's exactly as you said, with the pandemic and everything like that, this has opened up a lot more doors for a lot of people to be able to experience and try new things. And this was one of the positives that came out of the pandemic for me, was that I was able to, try podcasting, and I was given this opportunity thanks to yourself and JT at O-Face Wrestling, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's been such a great experience, and it's just, if anything, just made me create a load more friends.
And this is the thing, and this is the thing I love about wrestling as well, is the fact is that it is open, and you don't just have to have one opinion. You can have kind of multiple ones, and I'm sure we don't agree on everything as well. But to come here and to be open, and to give opinions, and to do the show, and to keep coming back. Because every time I do a show, everybody think, well, that's the last time I'm going to talk to them. And for some reason,
well, that's what I could say. You probably could say about me. I'm so opinionated sometimes, but that's the beauty of being able to be on a podcast. And I think this is what a lot more this is how the approach that a lot more wrestling fans should take, because as much as I am opinionated about wrestling and I have strong opinions, if you want to check, just check some of our previous podcasts out. But I am very open to listening to everyone else's opinions, and I appreciate them. And it is a way of being able to experience wrestling in a better form. I'm all for listening to all different promotions, opinions about different wrestlers. It doesn't have to always be, turned into an argument,
I think without a doubt, and I think, it's proven that people who might not talk to each other about anything or have anything else in common can find a common ground in professional wrestling and actually speak about it and actually put on the show as well, because like I said, with the WNR podcast as well, the past year has been one of the most successful years we've had, and that is in part to you as well. And I'd just like to say thank you for being on and for just putting up with me,
Well, I mean, I'm just going to say the exact same thing back to you. I mean, thanks for having me on here and putting up with my very strong opinions at times.
Well, like I said, the podcast has been going for 6 years, and you're a bigger part of it than kind of anybody else, and the reason why it's still going today is personally from that, It's
been a great experience for sure.
Yeah, well, enough of that niceness, because of course the next time we'll be doing a pod together will be WrestleMania Backlash, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot of fun things to say about Raw and SmackDown on the road to WrestleMania Backlash.
Can I just say as well, it's what's incredibly fun is the openness to feeling like you can have an opinion and not feel like you're just going to get ridiculed for it. So I want to just take this time to appreciate the WNR podcast for not just the shows with me, but with Monty and the Ultimate One as well. You're very open to listening to other people's views.
Well, no, I was just about to say, thank you, and it wouldn't be possible without you and about the whole, I say the WNR podcast team. I always see it as a team effort as well, so it wouldn't be where it is today without everybody else,
Definitely. And to our listeners, so thank you so much.
Yeah, that's out. Like I say, thank you, Jaxie. Everybody listening, like I said, appreciate it over the last 6 years, to go from where we were to where we are now. And like I said, the emails, and I know I should be on Twitter more, but it's like sometimes life gets in the way. But again, I just appreciate the fantastic support and for kind of everybody else that's involved in it. As well. But that is it for the 6th anniversary show. Before we go, our follow of the week it's all of you, because of course it's the 6th anniversary show, so why wouldn't you be?
Yes.
Everybody at home going yeah. Don't forget though, we're across all social media, Twitter at the WNR podcast, I'm at the WNRJR. Jaxie, do you want to say where you are?
Yep, I am at Jaxie Scarlett on Instagram and Twitter, and Rowena Ferguson on Facebook.
Brilliant. WNR also on Facebook and Instagram, across all the Google platforms. Send us an email at WNRpodcast@gmail.com, and YouTube. WNR Podcast, where all the latest clips and podcasts at the same time on YouTube as do SoundCloud on your phone. Also Spotify and iTunes, where you can download, subscribe, rate, and review there. So that is it. Our next episode will be NXT UK with WNR Dan. Our next episode with Jaxie will be the WrestleMania Backlash, but until then, I have been James Rollins, and I was joined by the WNR Dan, the Ultimate One, Monty, and the fabulous Jaxie Scarlett. Thank you very much for joining me on this anniversary show.
Thanks for having me again. It's been great.
Well, no problems, and I'd like to thank everybody for listening, and we'll catch you next week. Bye.